Tonight we are leave behind the familiar world of marble temples, bustling harbors, and the songs of poets. Instead, you travel toward a place where even memory feels unfinished. Above you stretches a sky without stars. Beneath your feet lies stone untouched by footsteps. The wind carries no scent of olive trees or sea salt, only the quiet breath of a world that has not yet learned its own name. So before we continue tonight's journey, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy exploring these ancient stories together. Now allow your breathing to slow. Listen carefully. Somewhere in this endless silence, something is waiting to open its eye for the very first time. It is an eye unlike any ever imagined by later generations. Vast, brilliant, and solitary. It gazes not with cruelty, but with astonishing clarity. Before stories call its owner a monster, before frightened sailors whisper fearful tales around flickering campfires, before heroes seek glory by defeating impossible creatures, there exists only a newborn being looking upon existence with quiet wonder. You have come to witness the beginning of the Cyclopes. Even their name carries uncertainty. Some ancient traditions simply called them the round-eyed ones. Others believed the single eye represented a circle of heavenly fire, or the blazing disk of the sun itself. Historians continue to debate whether the earliest storytellers imagined a terrifying giant or something far more sacred, a being whose single eye could perceive truths hidden from ordinary sight. No one can answer with complete certainty. That mystery has endured for thousands of years. You stand at the edge of a world before time has settled into familiar rhythms. There are no kingdoms, no cities, no kings upon golden thrones. The mountains still rise like sleeping giants from the earth, their jagged peaks wrapped in drifting mists. Rivers carve their first patient paths through untouched valleys. Deep beneath the ground, molten stone glows softly, filling vast caverns with a crimson light that never fades. The air feels warm here, not with sunlight, with creation itself. The earth is still remembering how to breathe. Far above, the endless sky stretches without interruption. Immense and cold, it seems almost alive, watching everything below with silent authority. Beneath that immeasurable ceiling, the great earth stirs. She is Gaia, whose body is every mountain, every valley, every hidden cave where unseen waters gather in darkness. You do not yet know her children, but she already carries them within herself. The ground trembles so gently that you almost mistake it for your own heartbeat. Small stones slide across the cavern floor. Tiny streams ripple in their underground channels. Warm air escapes through narrow cracks, carrying the scent of fresh minerals and distant fire. Something is awakening. Ancient poets describe this moment differently. Some imagined Gaia shaping her children from living stone. Others believed they emerged naturally, as mountains themselves might one day decide to walk. Another interpretation survives among later philosophers, suggesting these births symbolize the untamed powers hidden beneath the earth, long before humanity learned to harness fire and metal. Whatever the truth may have been, every version agrees upon one remarkable detail. The children were unlike anything that had existed before. The first to emerge is Brontes. His name will one day mean thunder. His enormous hands press against cooling rock as he lifts himself into the glowing cavern. He is vast beyond imagination, yet there is nothing savage about his first movements. Like any newborn creature, he simply wishes to understand the strange world surrounding him. His single eye opens slowly, reflecting rivers of molten stone that flow across distant walls. Soon another follows, steropes, lightning. Then comes Arges, brightness. Each bears only one great eye centered upon a broad forehead. Yet when you look closely, nothing about them seems incomplete. Their vision appears astonishingly focused, almost peaceful. They do not glance rapidly from place to place as later mortals will. Instead, they look deeply, as though seeing beneath the surface of every stone, every shadow, every spark dancing within the earth. You begin to wonder whether their single eye is not a limitation at all. Perhaps it is another kind of perfection. Warm silence surrounds the newborn giants. No voices instruct them. No laws govern them. No expectations weigh upon their shoulders. There is only Gaia. You cannot fully see her, for she is the mountain itself, the cavern walls, the steady warmth beneath your feet. Yet her presence fills every corner of this underground sanctuary. The air feels comforting. The stone no longer seems cold. Water dripping from unseen ceilings echoes like a gentle lullaby. For a brief moment, the universe knows peace. It will not last. High above the earth, another ancient being watches. Uranus, the sky. He stretches endlessly across the heavens, embracing the world below while also ruling it. His gaze reaches every valley, every ocean, every hidden mountain. Few beings possess greater authority. Fewer still possess greater fear. At first, you sense only a change in the air. The warmth begins to fade. A cool wind descends through narrow shafts leading toward the surface. Shadows lengthen across the glowing cavern. Even the rivers of molten stone seem to quiet themselves. The newborn Cyclopes look upward. They have never seen the sky, yet somehow they know someone is watching. Another ancient tradition claims that Uranus recoiled immediately upon seeing their single eye. Some believed he feared their appearance. Others argued it was not their form that terrified him, but what that eye represented. A being capable of seeing too deeply might someday perceive weaknesses hidden even within a king of heaven. Fear often arrives before understanding. That lesson is as old as the gods themselves. Brontes reaches toward the faint beam of pale light filtering from the distant world above. Dust glitters inside it, like tiny stars waiting to be born. His enormous fingers never quite touch its source. The light withdraws. Silence returns. You feel something difficult to describe. Not danger, not yet. Only disappointment. The Cyclopes cannot know why the warmth has faded. They cannot understand suspicion. They have committed no wrong. They have spoken no defiant words. Their only act has been opening an eye upon the world. Yet destiny has already begun measuring them. Far away, hidden beneath layers of earth and sky, strange signs begin appearing. Sacred fires flicker without wind. Mountain peaks echo with sounds resembling distant hammers. Although no hands yet hold tools, birds refuse to fly across certain valleys. Streams change direction for a single night before quietly returning to their familiar courses. Later priests would remember these as omens, whether they truly occurred or were added by generations of storytellers. No one can know. Still, surviving traditions agree that nature itself seemed uneasy, as though recognizing that these newborn giants would someday shape the fate of gods. The Cyclopes remain unaware. They explore their glowing caverns with gentle curiosity. They touch smooth crystal walls. They listen to underground rivers. They watch sparks leap from pools of molten stone. Already, an unexpected fascination begins to grow inside them. Fire, not destructive fire, creative fire. The warm glow calls to them with quiet familiarity. Brontes kneels beside a stream of glowing rock and watches tiny sparks dance upward before disappearing into darkness. Steropes notices how heat changes stone, making it softer before allowing it to harden again. Arges studies the brilliant colors hidden inside cooling minerals. Without realizing it, they are already learning, already becoming, already following a path that no prophecy has yet spoken aloud. Some researchers believe this quiet fascination explains why the Cyclopes later became unmatched divine smiths. Others suggest their bond with fire reflected humanity's earliest awe toward volcanoes, where unimaginable power created both destruction and beauty. The truth remains hidden, like so much of the oldest myths. As you stand beside these silent giants, you realize something remarkable. The stories you heard as a child never began here. They began with monsters. But this beginning is different. There is no rage, no violence, no hunger for flesh, only innocence waiting beneath an endless sky that has already begun to fear what it does not understand. Above the earth, unseen clouds slowly gather. Deep within heaven, an ancient king continues watching. And somewhere beyond even his knowledge, the threads of fate tighten almost imperceptibly, preparing the first great sorrow the Cyclopes will ever know. But destiny has not yet revealed why a single eye would become both their greatest gift and their deepest curse. The first thing you notice is the silence above. Not the peaceful silence that filled the warm caverns where the Cyclopes first opened their eyes, but a heavier quiet. It hangs beneath the vast sky, like a promise left unspoken. The beams of pale daylight that once slipped into Gaia's hidden chambers grow fewer with each passing moment, as though the heavens themselves are beginning to close. You walk beside Brontes as he gazes upward once again. His single eye reflects only a narrow ribbon of light. He cannot know that it is already disappearing. The three brothers have learned much in what feels like only a handful of seasons. They move confidently through the underground world, discovering crystal-filled halls, steaming rivers, and immense caverns whose ceilings vanish into darkness. They know where cool springs emerge from the stone. They know where warm air carries the scent of sulfur and glowing rock. Most of all, they have come to love the fire sleeping beneath the earth, not as a weapon, as a companion. You watch Steropes stretch out one enormous hand toward a stream of molten stone. Tiny sparks leap onto his broad fingers before fading harmlessly into the air. He studies each glowing ember with quiet fascination. Arges discovers that certain stones sing softly when struck together. Brontes notices that heat changes the shape of rock itself. The three brothers spend long hours experimenting without words, learning through observation rather than instruction. They have no teachers, no laws, no temples. Their world is still young enough that curiosity serves every purpose. Gaia watches with patient affection, though she rarely speaks. Her presence is everywhere. Warmth rises gently through the stone beneath your feet. Underground rivers never flood the brothers' resting places. Caverns seem almost to widen as they explore them, welcoming their enormous forms. It feels less like living beneath the earth than living within a mother's embrace. Above them, however, another heart grows colder. Uranus continues to watch. The Lord of the endless heavens has seen many extraordinary children emerge from Gaia. Mountains have risen, seas have formed. Strange spirits have awakened among forests and rivers. Yet these three disturb him in ways he cannot fully explain. Some ancient traditions insist that Uranus feared the Cyclopes because their strength would one day rival his own. Others suggest something more unsettling, their single eye, fixed steadily upon whatever it observed, seemed incapable of deception. It was said to pierce appearances and perceive hidden truths. Whether this was ever meant literally remains uncertain. But fear seldom waits for certainty. You imagine Uranus stretching across the heavens, looking downward through endless clouds. Every day he sees the brothers growing stronger. Every day they become more confident. Every day their bond with the living fire deepens. He begins to ask himself a dangerous question. What might these children become if allowed to reach maturity? Fear changes even immortal beings. It whispers possibilities until they feel inevitable. One evening, if evenings can truly exist before the familiar rhythm of the sun and stars, a strange chill sweeps through Gaia's caverns. The warm air suddenly cools. The glowing rivers dim. The scent of minerals is replaced by the sharp freshness of rain carried from the distant sky. Brontes pauses. Steropes lifts his head. Argus stops striking stones together. All three look upward. The silence feels different, expectant. You feel it as well. The earth itself seems to hold its breath. Then comes a sound unlike anything the brothers have heard before. Thunder. Not the thunder that will one day answer Zeus's command. For that weapon does not yet exist. This is older, raw. The voice of the sky announcing its authority. The cavern trembles. Dust falls in shimmering curtains from the ceiling. Cracks race across ancient stone. Light pours downward through widening openings, brilliant enough to force even the Cyclopes to shield their great eye. For a single hopeful heartbeat, it almost appears that the heavens have opened to welcome them. Instead, soldiers of the sky descend. Ancient myths rarely describe these servants in detail. Some imagine divine winds given shape. Others believe they were powers older than the Olympians themselves. Whatever their nature, they move without hesitation. Their purpose is clear. The Cyclops are to be taken. Brontes steps forward. Not to fight, to understand. His deep voice echoes through the cavern for the first time. Why? The question receives no answer. Only commands, only force. You watch as invisible strength wraps around the brothers like chains woven from cold air itself. They struggle, not with rage, but with confusion. The stone beneath their feet cracks under their weight. Warm springs burst from the ground. Molten rivers splash against cavern walls. Gaia awakens. The mountain groans. Entire cliffs split apart. Trees upon the distant surface sway, though no wind touches them. Across the newborn world, valleys tremble as the Earth Mother senses her children being torn away. Her grief becomes an earthquake. Some surviving hymns suggest this was the first true earthquake ever known. Whether symbolic or literal, the image endured because it felt true. A mother's sorrow should shake the world. Yet even Gaia cannot overcome the authority of the heavens. Uranus speaks at last. His voice arrives not through words, but through the immense pressure filling every corner of the earth. These children will remain hidden forever. No trial, no crime, no chance to defend themselves. Only judgment. Brontes reaches toward the fading warmth of Gaia. Steropes looks once more at the glowing rivers he has grown to love. Argus watches tiny sparks disappear into darkness. The brothers are carried deeper. far deeper than they have ever traveled before. The familiar caverns vanish behind them. Warm air becomes cold. The scent of fresh stone gives way to damp earth untouched for ages. Even the sound of flowing water fades until only distant echoes remain. At last they arrive. Tartarus. Not yet the prison of defeated titans. Not yet the place feared throughout Greek mythology. It is simply an abyss, an endless gulf beneath creation itself. The darkness here feels almost solid. Torchlight has never reached these halls. Birdsong has never echoed through these passages. No breeze carries news from the surface. Only silence survives. The chains binding the brothers dissolve. They are free to move, but there is nowhere to go. Towering walls of black stone surround them in every direction. Their great strength becomes meaningless against a prison built by the oldest powers in existence. For the first time since their birth, the Cyclops understand loneliness. You sit beside them as endless ages begin to pass. Time behaves strangely here, without sunrise or sunset. Moments blur together. The brothers speak little. Sometimes Brontes rests his hand upon the cold wall, hoping to feel Gaia's warmth beyond it. Sometimes Steropes closes his great eye, listening for distant rivers that no longer reach this place. Argus gathers small stones and patiently arranges them into circles, only to scatter them again days or centuries later. No one can measure how long they remain. Some traditions say years. Others claim countless ages passed before the next chapter unfolded. Historians continue to debate whether Tartarus represents a physical prison or a symbolic descent into forgotten memory. Perhaps both meanings existed together. Either way, the emotional truth remains unchanged. The children whom the earth loved most had become the children the sky feared most. Yet something unexpected happens inside the darkness. The Cyclops do not become bitter. They do not curse Gaia for failing to save them. They do not even spend their endless days imagining revenge against Uranus. Instead, they continue observing, watching, learning. Brontes notices tiny crystals growing slowly upon damp stone. Steropes studies faint flashes of light hidden within black minerals. Argus discovers that striking certain rocks together still creates brief showers of sparks. Even in the deepest prison ever imagined, their fascination with creation refuses to die. It is a quiet act of hope. Perhaps that is why destiny never abandoned them. Far above, seasons pass across mountains they cannot see. Oceans deepen, forests spread. The world grows older, and somewhere beyond Tartarus, another child of Gaia quietly matures. His name is Cronus. He has begun listening to whispers carried by prophecy. For although the Cyclops cannot hear it, the oldest of the fates have already spoken a warning. No throne built upon fear can endure forever. The first cracks have appeared. The sky simply does not know it yet. You awaken to a darkness so complete that it almost seems to possess weight. There is no dawn here, no sunset, no moon rising above quiet hills. Even the passage of time has become uncertain. Without the rhythm of the heavens, years lose their meaning, dissolving into one endless night beneath the roots of the world. You sit beside Brontes upon a shelf of black stone polished smooth by countless silent hours. He does not speak, neither do Steropes nor Argus. Long ago, they counted the echoes dripping from unseen ceilings. Later, they measured time by the cooling and warming of hidden streams. Eventually, even those small comforts became impossible to follow. Only memory remains. Sometimes Brontes closes his great eye and recalls the warmth of Gaia's embrace. He remembers the scent of fresh stone after underground springs burst through newly formed rock. He remembers the first glowing rivers they explored together. Those memories have become precious, because memories are the only sunlight Tartarus allows. The prison itself seems endless. You walk beside the brothers through vast caverns where towering pillars disappear into darkness above. The air is cool against your skin, carrying the faint scent of damp minerals and ancient earth. Every footstep echoes so far that it returns long after you have forgotten taking it. Silence has become another prisoner. Yet Tartarus is not entirely empty, far away. Beyond winding passages and cliffs descending into invisible depths, other voices sometimes drift through the darkness, deep, ancient, filled with sorrow. The brothers pause whenever they hear them. No one knows exactly who speaks. Some traditions suggest forgotten children of Gaia imprisoned long before the Cyclopes. Others imagine spirits older than memory itself, whispering through cracks in creation. Historians continue to debate whether these voices belonged to real beings or reflected the loneliness of those confined within the abyss. The Cyclops never discover the answer. Neither do you. The mystery lingers. Perhaps it was never meant to be solved. One evening, if such a word still holds meaning here, you notice something unusual. A tiny point of light. It flickers briefly between two distant rocks before disappearing. Odysseus sees it first. He walks slowly toward the place where it appeared. There is nothing there, only cold stone. Yet, hours later, another faint spark dances across the cavern floor. Steropes smiles. It is the first smile you have witnessed in countless years. He kneels beside the stone and gently strikes two dark rocks together. A single spark leaps into the darkness. Then another, then a shower of tiny stars. The brothers stare in quiet amazement. Even here, fire still exists. Not the roaring rivers they once loved. Not the great glowing streams flowing beneath Gaia's mountains. Only fragile sparks lasting the briefest heartbeat. But they are enough. Enough to remind them that creation survives even in places built for despair. Night after endless night, the brothers begin experimenting once more. Brontes searches for harder stone. Steropes discovers that certain minerals produce brighter sparks than others. Argy patiently gathers pieces of black rock into careful piles, testing each combination with endless curiosity. There is no audience, no reward, no promise of freedom. Still they continue. You begin to understand something essential about the Cyclopes. Creation is not simply what they do, it is who they are. No prison can take that away. Some modern interpretations suggest that this part of the myth reflects humanity's earliest relationship with fire itself. Long before great cities rose across Greece, people learned that even in the darkest places, a single spark could preserve hope, warmth, and life. Whether ancient storytellers intended such symbolism remains uncertain. Yet it fits beautifully. The smallest light often matters most when surrounded by darkness. Far above Tartarus, however, the world continues changing. Though the Cyclopes cannot witness it, Gaia has not forgotten her imprisoned sons. Sometimes you feel her grief travel downward through the stone. The walls tremble ever so gently. Warmth briefly returns to the cold floor beneath your feet. Small streams begin flowing where none existed before. It feels almost like a mother reaching through impossible distance to comfort children she cannot touch. Brontes notices every tremor. He places one enormous hand against the cavern wall. His eye closes. For several quiet moments, he simply listens. Perhaps he hears Gaia's heartbeat, perhaps only his own. No storyteller can say with certainty. Elsewhere, Uranus remains upon his heavenly throne, yet something has begun changing within the sky. His confidence grows brittle. Every decision rooted in fear demands another fearful decision afterward. He watches his children constantly. He trusts no one completely. Even joy has become difficult for him. Power has brought safety, but never peace. Ancient myths often understand this truth remarkably well. The prison built for others gradually becomes the prison of the ruler himself. One cannot endlessly fear the future without surrendering the present. Deep within Tartarus, the Cyclops know nothing of these changes. Still, destiny quietly advances. One day you hear another sound, unlike the mysterious whispers drifting through distant tunnels, unlike the dripping water, unlike shifting stone. It is laughter, sharp, confident, young. It echoes only once before vanishing into the abyss. The brothers exchange uncertain glances. Visitors. Impossible. Yet the laughter comes again. Closer this time. Brontes stands. Steropes grips a heavy stone. Argus listens carefully. The footsteps accompanying the laughter are light, almost graceful. Nothing like the slow march of giants. Nothing like the invisible servants who carried them into this prison long ago. Whoever approaches belongs to another generation, another future. The footsteps never arrive. Instead, silence returns as suddenly as it vanished. The brothers wait. Hours pass. Nothing happens. Some believed these sounds came from dreams sent by the fates themselves. Others suggested they echoed events occurring far above, where younger gods and titans had begun shaping history. No explanation survives with certainty. Only the mystery remains. And perhaps that uncertainty serves the story better than any answer could. Hope rarely announces itself clearly. Sometimes it arrives as nothing more than a distant sound. Years continue flowing past unseen. The Cyclops grow wiser, not older in the way mortals understand age, for divine beings change differently. Instead, experience settles within them like layers of polished stone. Brontes becomes patient. Steropes becomes thoughtful. Argus becomes quietly observant. Their suffering reshapes them without hardening their hearts. That may be the greatest miracle hidden inside Tartarus. Many beings emerge from darkness carrying hatred. The Cyclopes emerge carrying understanding. At times, they wonder whether Uranus feared what they might become. Now another question quietly forms. What if imprisonment itself has transformed them into something greater than they would otherwise have been? No prophecy answers. No oracle speaks. The abyss keeps its secrets. Then, after an age that feels longer than memory itself, Tartarus shudders. Not gently, violently. The ground leaps beneath your feet. Massive pillars crack. Dust pours from unseen heights like grey rain. The hidden streams begin flowing backward. Even the darkness seems to recoil. Far above, a war has begun. You cannot see it. Yet every stone beneath your hands tells the same story. The old order is breaking, somewhere beyond these endless prison walls. A son has finally risen against his father, and though the Cyclops do not yet know his name, the echoes of his rebellion are already traveling downward through the bones of the world. For the first time since their imprisonment, the darkness no longer feels eternal. Somewhere beyond the silence, fate has begun to move. The shaking does not stop. It rolls through Tartarus in long, powerful waves, sending fragments of black stone across the cavern floor. Dust gathers upon your shoulders. Hidden streams spill over their banks, somewhere beyond the darkness. Enormous walls groan beneath the pressure they were never meant to endure. Brontes rises first. His single eye opens wide. Steropes turns toward the distant passage where the strange laughter once echoed. Argus presses his hand against the ground. For the first time in ages, the stone does not feel still. It feels alive. Something immense is happening far above. You cannot see the sky from here, but you can almost imagine it tearing open. Thunder moves through the depths. Though no storm has entered Tartarus, the sound arrives through the earth itself, deep and uneven, followed by the crash of mountains breaking somewhere beyond sight. The brothers listen. Their prison is speaking, and its message is clear. Uranus is falling. Ancient traditions remembered the rebellion in different ways. Some said Gaia armed her youngest Titan son with a curved sickle. Others believed destiny itself placed the weapon into his hands. No one in Tartarus sees the moment, yet you feel it. A cry travels through every layer of creation. The sky withdraws from the earth. The ancient embrace binding heaven and Gaia is broken. For one quiet instant, the walls around you seem lighter. Bronte steps toward the nearest gate. It does not open. The brothers wait. Footsteps eventually descend through the passages. Not the light steps from their mysterious dreams. These are heavy, deliberate, confident. A pale glow appears in the distance. The first steady light to enter Tartarus since the Cyclopes were imprisoned. Brontes shields his eye. Steropes stands beside him. Arges does not move at all. A figure emerges carrying a curved blade darkened by ancient blood. Cronus, the new ruler of creation. He is younger than Uranus, but power already settles heavily around him. His face carries victory, caution, and something almost impossible to name. Fear. You sense it immediately. Cronus has defeated his father. Yet he has inherited his father's anxiety. Still, he approaches the Cyclops without hostility. The gates open, metal scrapes against stone, chains fall loose. Warm air enters the cavern. After ages in darkness, the brothers are free. At first, none of them moves. Freedom feels unfamiliar, almost dangerous. Brontes looks toward Cronus. There are no words of gratitude yet, only a question. Why? Cronus speaks of a new age. He promises that the cruelty of Uranus has ended. He tells them the children of Gaia will no longer be hidden because of their appearance or strength. The words sound beautiful. Perhaps, for a moment, Cronus believes them. You follow the brothers upward. The journey is slow. The air grows warmer with every step. Damp stone gives way to dry earth. The scent of sulfur fades, replaced by roots, moss, and distant rain. Then sunlight appears, not a narrow beam, the full morning sky. The Cyclopes stop beneath it. Their enormous eyes close against the brightness. Wind moves across their faces. It carries the scent of wet leaves, sea salt, and wild thyme growing along the hillsides. Brontes kneels and touches the grass. Steropes listens to birds calling from nearby trees. Arges looks toward a horizon wider than anything he has imagined. For a brief time, freedom feels complete. Gaia welcomes them. The mountains grow warm beneath their feet. Springs burst from the ground. Olive branches tremble although the air has become still. You can almost feel her relief. Her children have returned. Yet peace does not settle easily after rebellion. Cronus takes the throne of heaven. The Titans gather around him. New boundaries are drawn. New loyalties are demanded. The world begins organizing itself around another king. The Cyclopes remain near Gaia. Exploring the surface they were denied for so long. They study lightning flashing inside distant storms. They watch fire spread through dry grass after thunder strikes the earth. Everywhere they look, creation offers new lessons. Still, they sense eyes following them. Titans whisper when the brothers pass. Some admire their strength. Others fear it. A warning soon reaches Cronus. The source changes with every version. Some say Gaia spoke it. Some say the fates whispered through a dream. Others believed an oracle emerged from a sacred flame. The message remains almost unchanged. Cronus will one day be overthrown by his own child. The prophecy enters him like poison. You watch his confidence begin to narrow. He remembers Uranus. He remembers the sickle. He remembers how easily a son can become an enemy. The Cyclopes have done nothing against him. Yet their presence troubles his thoughts. Their strength could help a future challenger. Their knowledge of fire could shape weapons. Their gratitude might belong to whoever offers them lasting freedom. Fear begins building its argument. One night, Cronus summons the brothers. Sacred fires burn around his hall. The stone floor feels cold beneath your feet. Titan guards stand in silence beside towering pillars. Cronus does not meet their gaze for long. He speaks of danger. He claims enemies remain loyal to Uranus. He says the Cyclops must return below until the new kingdom becomes secure. Only briefly, only for safety. Brontes understands first. The promise has been broken. Steropes looks toward the guarded doors. Arges watches the flames trembling in bronze bowls. None of them attacks. That choice matters. They possess strength enough to shatter the hall, but violence would confirm every fear surrounding them. They have only just discovered sunlight. They do not wish to begin their freedom by spilling blood. Their restraint becomes their sacrifice. Once more, they descend. Once more, daylight narrows behind them. Once more, Tartarus opens its gates. Cronus orders stronger guards placed at the entrance. In some traditions, the dragon Campe becomes their jailer, a terrifying creature of scales, claws, and sleepless vigilance. The details vary. The betrayal does not. You return with the brothers to the darkness they thought they had escaped forever. This time, the pain is different. Uranus never pretended to love them. Cronus had offered hope. A broken promise wounds more deeply than open hatred. Brontes sits beside the old wall where he once searched for Gaia's heartbeat. Steropes stares at his empty hands. Arges closes his eye and remembers the horizon. The darkness feels colder now, because they know what waits beyond it. Yet something has changed within them. They have seen the sky. No prison can erase that. Years pass again, above them. Cronus becomes increasingly consumed by prophecy. One by one, his children disappear into his fear. The age he promised would be kinder begins repeating the cruelty that came before. Past choices tighten around the present, because Cronus betrayed those who might have become his allies. They will eventually become the makers of his defeat, far away, hidden from his father. One child survives. You sense him first through a dream. A young god stands beneath a mountain storm. Lightning surrounds his raised hand, but the bolt remains unfinished. Behind him, 3 shadows wait beside a blazing forge. Brontes awakens. Steropes has seen the same vision. So has Arges. None of them knows the young god's name. Yet the dream carries a warning. The next ruler who enters Tartarus will not arrive carrying promises alone. He will arrive needing them, and when that moment comes, freedom will no longer be given as an act of mercy. It will be forged through trust, sacrifice, and war. The dream lingers long after you awaken. Its light fades from the darkness of Tartarus. Yet something within the Cyclopes has quietly changed. For countless ages, they endured imprisonment because hope was only a memory. Now hope has become something different. It has become an expectation, not certainty, never certainty, but the quiet feeling that destiny has begun walking toward them. Brontes notices it first. The air feels warmer than usual. Steropes discovers that the tiny sparks hidden inside black stones leap more brightly than before. Arges listens carefully and hears distant echoes that do not belong to shifting rock or dripping water. They sound almost like marching feet, far above. The universe has entered another age of conflict. Cronus sits uneasily upon the throne once claimed by Uranus. Every prophecy he tried to escape has followed him into power. One by one, his own children have disappeared into the darkness of his fear. Yet one child escaped, hidden upon distant Crete, raised beneath the shelter of sacred mountains. His name is Zeus. You do not see his childhood directly. Instead, you hear stories drifting downward into Tartarus like faint voices carried through cracks in the earth. Shepherds whisper of strange storms gathering around an unknown youth. Priests speak quietly of an eagle circling lonely peaks. Old women tending sacred fires dream of a young king carrying lightning that does not yet exist. No one understands these signs completely, but the fates rarely speak without purpose. One day the prison trembles again, not with the uncertain violence of collapsing stone. With deliberate force, the ground shakes 3 times, then becomes still. A roar echoes through the abyss, not a roar of anger, a battle cry. Steel strikes stone. Voices ring through forgotten corridors. Then another sound joins them. The shriek of Campe, the terrible guardian of Tartarus. Ancient poets described her in many different ways. Some imagined the upper body of a woman joined to the coils of a dragon. Others gave her countless serpents twisting from her waist, while fierce beasts emerged from every limb. However she appeared, one truth survived every tradition. She had never been defeated, until now. The battle unfolds somewhere beyond your sight. The Cyclops wait in silence. Then the scream ends. Heavy gates begin opening. Not slowly, violently. Ancient locks split apart. Chains crash against stone. Warm air rushes into Tartarus like the first breath after drowning. Light follows. Real sunlight. Brontes shields his eye. Sterops smiles. Arges simply watches. A young figure appears in the doorway. He carries neither crown nor royal robes. Dust covers his sandals. His bronze armor bears fresh scars. Yet something about him immediately commands attention. He walks without fear. Even here, especially here, Zeus. His blue-grey eyes meet the single eye of Brontes. Neither looks away. For several long moments, no one speaks. It is an unusual silence, not empty, respectful. Zeus finally lowers his spear. I have not come to imprison you. His voice echoes gently through the cavern. I have come to ask. The words surprise everyone, even the Cyclops. Uranus commanded. Cronus promised. Zeus asks. That difference changes everything. He tells them of the war unfolding across heaven. The Titans remain powerful. The mountains themselves have become battlefields. Every victory costs dearly. Every defeat threatens the future of the world. I cannot win alone. Brontes studies the young god carefully. He sees confidence, but also exhaustion, fear, responsibility. Zeus carries the weight of many lives already depending upon him. Perhaps that is why the Cyclops trust him. He does not pretend victory is guaranteed. He simply refuses to surrender. The brothers follow him from Tartarus. For the second time, they emerge beneath the open sky. This time, sunlight feels even warmer. The sea breeze carries the fragrance of pine forests and blooming herbs across distant hillsides. Clouds drift peacefully above mountains soon destined for war. You realize how beautiful the world remains despite the violence preparing to reshape it. Gaia greets her children once more. The earth softens beneath their feet. Fresh springs appear along their path. Wildflowers bloom where moments earlier only stone had rested. Even nature seems to understand that something extraordinary has begun. Zeus leads them toward hidden valleys where his allies gather. There stand the Hecatoncheires, the 100-handed giants, recently freed alongside the Cyclopes. Massive though the Cyclops are, these beings appear even more astonishing. Each greeting is quiet, respectful. No speeches, no celebrations, only shared understanding. They all know captivity, that shared suffering forms stronger bonds than words ever could. As evening settles over the mountains, Zeus brings the brothers to a lonely volcanic slope. Rivers of glowing lava move slowly beneath cooling black rock. Steam rises into the night air. The scent of sulfur mingles with salt carried from the distant sea. Brontes immediately kneels beside the molten stone. His eye widens. He smiles. It feels like coming home. Sterops runs his hand through warm volcanic ash. Arges lifts an unfamiliar metal from the mountainside. Heavy, bright, filled with hidden promise. Without instruction, the 3 brothers begin working. They gather stone, shape great anvils, raise enormous furnaces from volcanic rock itself. Soon flames leap skyward. Not ordinary fire, sacred fire. The mountain seems eager to help them. The wind feeds the flames instead of extinguishing them. The earth offers ores unlike any found elsewhere. You watch the first true divine forge come alive. Its sound fills the valley. Hammers strike glowing metal. Bellows roar. Sparks rise like swarms of golden fireflies into the dark sky. The rhythm becomes almost musical. Steady, calm, purposeful. Hours pass, perhaps days, perhaps longer. Time loses importance beside creation. Brontes shapes impossible metal that shines brighter than sunlight. Steropes folds it again and again until no flaw remains. Arges cools each piece in sacred springs flowing directly from Gaia herself. Some surviving traditions believe the materials themselves came from heaven and earth together. Fragments of stars, volcanic iron, and divine fire combined into something no mortal craft could ever reproduce. Whether literal or symbolic, the message remains beautiful. The greatest creations often require many worlds working together. Finally, Zeus approaches. "What do you need?" he asks. Brontes answers with remarkable simplicity. "A storm." The young god looks upward. Clouds have already begun gathering above the mountain, as though the sky itself understands. Lightning flashes across distant peaks. Rain never falls, only electricity dances among dark clouds. The Cyclops raise their hammers. With every strike, thunder answers. Metal glows white. The mountain trembles. The clouds descend lower and lower until they almost touch the forge. Then it happens. A bolt of lightning leaps from the heavens into the waiting metal, not destroying it, joining it. The valley erupts in brilliant light. You instinctively close your eyes. When you open them again, silence has fallen. Brontes holds something unlike anything ever created. The first thunderbolt. It is neither spear nor sword. It seems almost alive. Lightning coils quietly around its surface before disappearing inside again. Its light never fades. Zeus reaches toward it cautiously. The moment his fingers close around the weapon, distant clouds answer with rolling thunder. The universe recognizes its new master, yet the Cyclops are not finished. For Poseidon, they shape a trident capable of stirring every ocean. For Hades, they forge a helmet that conceals its wearer even from watchful eyes. Each gift reflects its future owner. Each becomes inseparable from the god who receives it. Some ancient philosophers later suggested these weapons carried more than power. They carried trust. Every strike of the Cyclops' hammers became a promise that strength should protect rather than dominate. Whether the Olympians always honored that promise is another question. One history cannot fully answer. As dawn finally rises over the volcanic mountain, Zeus stands quietly beside the brothers. He says little. He does not need to. His gratitude is visible. Brontes watches the young king lift the thunderbolt toward the brightening sky. Steropes smiles at the sound of distant storms gathering. Arges quietly places another piece of glowing metal upon the anvil. He already knows more work lies ahead, because weapons alone do not win wars. Those who wield them must still choose wisely. Far across the horizon, the Titans have seen the first lightning flash. They do not yet know its source, but every omen now points toward the same unavoidable truth. The balance of the cosmos has begun to change, and at the heart of that change stand three forgotten prisoners whose greatest power was never their strength. It was their ability to create hope from fire. The first thunderbolt leaves the forge before dawn. You feel its departure more than you see it. The volcanic mountain shudders beneath your feet. Sacred flames bend toward the eastern sky. Far above, dark clouds gather around Zeus as he lifts the weapon shaped by the Cyclopes. For one suspended moment, the world becomes silent. Then lightning crosses the heavens. It does not fall like ordinary fire. It moves with intention. The bolt strikes a distant mountain held by the Titans, and the entire horizon glows white. Stone bursts apart. Clouds roll backward. A sound like the breaking of the sky travels across valleys, seas, and forests. The war has changed until this moment. Zeus and his allies fought with courage, but little advantage. The Titans were ancient, immense, and deeply rooted in the world they ruled. Their strength seemed as permanent as mountains. Now permanence begins to tremble. Brontes watches the flash from the forge entrance. He does not celebrate. Neither do Steropus nor Argus. They understand what they have created. A weapon is never only metal and fire. It becomes every choice made by the hand that carries it. If Zeus uses the thunderbolt wisely, it may end tyranny. If he uses it without restraint, another age of fear will begin. That uncertainty troubles them. Some traditions say the Cyclops joined the battle directly. Others describe them remaining behind the lines, forging weapons and repairing shattered armor while the Olympians fought above. Another interpretation survives. Perhaps their true battlefield was always the forge. You remain with them as the Titanomachy unfolds across the world. Every day, wounded gods arrive through smoke and mountain mist. Their armor is split. Their shields are broken. Their faces carry exhaustion that immortality cannot hide. The Cyclops ask few questions. They work. Brontes reshapes damaged bronze. Steropes strengthens spearheads in sacred fire. Arges studies every fracture, searching for the hidden weakness that allowed it to form. Their hammers strike through the night. The sound rolls across the mountain in a steady rhythm, not hurried, not frantic, almost calming. Strike, turn, cool, begin again. The scent of hot metal fills the air. Ash settles upon your skin. Heat presses against your face while cold winds descend from the snowy peaks above. Around you, creation and destruction exist side by side. That contrast defines the Cyclops. They build so that others may fight. They give shape to powers they may never control. And each victory brings consequences they cannot yet foresee. Poseidon arrives first. Sea water drips from his hair. His trident bears deep scars from striking the defenses of Oceanus and other ancient powers. He says little, but his expression has changed since receiving the weapon. At first, he carried it with wonder. Now he carries it with responsibility. Steropes takes the trident and runs one enormous hand across its damaged surface. He feels each wound in the metal as though touching an injury in living flesh. You forced it too deeply, he says. Poseidon lowers his gaze. The correction is gentle. Still, it matters. Power has begun teaching the young god restraint. Hades arrives later, emerging from shadow with his helm beneath one arm. He has used invisibility to move behind Titan lines. But each journey into secrecy leaves him quieter. Arges notices. You are becoming too comfortable unseen, he warns. Hades studies the helm. Perhaps he understands. Perhaps he does not. The war is changing every god who enters it. Zeus changes most of all. At first, he returns to the forge after every battle. He speaks openly with the brothers, describing each victory and failure. He asks their advice. He listens when Brontes warns him that lightning should terrify enemies, not innocent lands. But as the war continues, his visits become shorter. His responsibilities grow. His reputation spreads. More voices surround him. The Cyclops watch their young ally slowly becoming a king. Pride enters him quietly. Not yet corruption, not yet cruelty. Only the growing belief that he alone carries the future. Brontes recognizes the danger. He has seen rulers become prisoners of prophecy before. One night, a strange omen appears above the forge. 3 stars vanish from the sky. In their place, a single red light burns over Mount Othrys, the stronghold of the Titans. The flames in the Cyclops' furnaces turn blue. No one speaks. Ancient seers later interpreted the sign in different ways. Some believed it predicted the fall of 3 Titan defenses. Others said it warned that 3 creators would one day die because of the weapons they forged. The second meaning will not become clear for many years. For now, the war continues. The Hecatoncheires enter the battlefield. Their 100 arms hurl stones faster than rain in a winter storm. Entire ridges collapse beneath the assault. The Titans answer with mountains torn from the earth and rivers redirected against their enemies. You stand upon the forge slope and watch the horizon flash. Distant thunder never stops. The ground sways under your feet. Ash falls like grey snow. Even the sea appears restless, rising and falling beneath Poseidon's anger. The Cyclops know their weapons are reshaping the world. That knowledge brings pride and fear. Each strike from Zeus scorches valleys. Each movement of Poseidon's trident alters coastlines. Each secret journey by Hades changes the course of unseen battles. The brothers begin to understand that creation does not end when an object leaves the maker's hands. Its consequences continue. That is the burden of every craftsperson. What you create may travel farther than you ever will. One evening, Zeus returns alone. His armor is blackened. Blood marks one side of his face, though the wound is already closing. He sets the thunderbolt upon the anvil. A thin fracture runs along its surface. Brontes looks at him. What did you strike? Zeus remains silent. That silence answers enough. Not a titan, something larger. Perhaps the mountain itself. Perhaps the boundary between heaven and earth. Surviving stories disagree. Brontes repairs the weapon, but he does not hide his unease. You cannot defeat fear by becoming more frightening than it. Zeus listens. For a moment, the young god returns. The weary son, the uncertain leader. Then the clouds call him back. Before leaving, he places one hand upon Brontes' shoulder. I remember who opened Tartarus. The words are meant as gratitude, yet they sound almost like a promise. And promises have wounded the Cyclops before. The final battle approaches. Prophecies spread among both armies. Titan priests dream of a sky emptied of old stars. Olympian seers hear voices rising from beneath the earth, declaring that the forgotten will decide the fate of kings. The Cyclops continue working. They strengthen the thunderbolt one final time. They sharpen the trident. They polish the helm until even firelight cannot cling to it. Then they step away from the forge. For the first time since the war began, their hammers fall silent. You stand with them upon the mountainside. Below, the armies gather. Above, clouds spiral around Zeus. The Hecatoncheires raise stones in countless hands. Titans move across the horizon like living mountains. The air smells of rain, iron, and burned earth. Brontes closes his eye. Perhaps he offers a prayer. Perhaps he simply listens to the world before it changes forever. Then Zeus throws the thunderbolt. Poseidon drives his trident into the earth. Hades disappears beneath his helm. The sky opens. The sea rises. Mountains fall. And the Cyclops watch their creations decide the future of the cosmos. Victory is near. But so is a question no weapon can answer. When the old rulers are gone, what kind of gods will the new rulers choose to become? The war ends beneath a sky filled with ash. For several days, no one celebrates. The mountains are too quiet. Rivers run cloudy with broken earth. Forests lean beneath the weight of dust carried from distant battlefields. You stand beside the Cyclops upon a ridge overlooking the changed world. The old order has fallen. Cronus and the defeated Titans have been cast into Tartarus, the same abyss that once held Brontes, Steropes, and Arges. The irony is impossible to ignore. The prison built through fear now receives the ruler who repeated that fear. Past choices have returned. They often do, far below. The sea slowly settles beneath Poseidon's command. Storm clouds separate around the peaks. The first clear sunlight in many years touches the damaged valleys. It feels warm upon your face. Yet the Cyclops do not rejoice immediately. They remember darkness too clearly. Victory has freed them, but it has also placed others behind the same gates they once prayed would open. Some traditions say they felt no sympathy for the Titans. Other interpretations suggest something quieter and more complicated. Perhaps they understood imprisonment better than anyone. No surviving poet tells you what Brontes thought as the gates of Tartarus closed around Cronus. Still, you can imagine him listening to the distant chains, not with satisfaction, with caution. Every new kingdom begins by deciding how it will treat the defeated. Zeus gathers his allies upon a high mountain. Its summit rises above the clouds, where the air is cold and thin. Snow remains in shaded hollows. Though sunlight glows across the upper cliffs, this mountain will become Olympus. For now, it is only stone. There are no golden halls, no marble courts, no sacred stairways climbing into the mist, only bare rock touched by wind and distant thunder. Zeus looks across the empty summit and sees possibility. The Cyclops see something else. Work. For the first time, they are asked to create not a weapon, but a home. That difference matters. Weapons are forged to end something. Homes are built so something may continue. Brontes walks slowly across the mountain, studying the stone beneath his feet. Steropes listens to the wind moving through narrow passes. Arges watches sunlight travel across the cliffs, noticing which surfaces hold warmth longest. They do not begin with plans, they begin by listening. The mountain has its own shape, its own resistance, its own hidden strengths. The brothers understand that true craftsmanship does not dominate material. It discovers what the material is willing to become. Some researchers believe this idea reflects ancient Greek respect for skilled labor. Stoneworkers, metal workers, and builders did not merely force nature into obedience. They worked with grain, weight, heat, and balance. The myth gives that wisdom to the Cyclopes. You follow them as the first foundations are marked. Brontes strikes the mountain with a hammer larger than an oak tree. The blow sounds like distant thunder, but the stone does not shatter wildly. It separates cleanly. Steropes shapes immense blocks with controlled bursts of heat. The rock glows red, then cools into smooth surfaces strong enough to support halls for immortal beings. Arges measures the path of light. He positions openings so dawn enters certain chambers, while moonlight fills others. Soon the summit changes. Terraces emerge from cliffs. Columns rise through drifting cloud. Broad stairways climb toward halls still open to the sky. The work continues through quiet mornings and star-filled nights. You smell crushed stone, pine smoke, and hot bronze. You hear chisels ringing across the heights. Cold winds move around your shoulders while sacred fires warm your hands. The gods begin arriving to watch. Athena studies the growing walls with careful interest. Apollo tests the echoes beneath unfinished arches. Artemis prefers the open balconies facing dark forests below. Aphrodite asks for reflecting pools. Oris requests stronger gates. Hermes wants hidden passages. The Cyclopes listen to each request with patience. Not every request is granted. That surprises the gods. Brontes refuses walls so thick they would block the mountain's breath. Steropes rejects decorations that weaken supporting beams. Arges removes a golden ceiling panel because it steals light from the stars. The gods are learning that builders possess their own authority. Even kings must sometimes listen to those who understand foundations. Zeus does listen, At first, he walks among the Cyclopes without ceremony, discussing storms, towers, and the placement of the great central hall. He asks Brontes where the throne should stand. "Where you can see the doors," Brontes replies. Zeus smiles. He assumes the advice concerns security. Perhaps it does, but perhaps Brontes means something deeper. A ruler should always see who enters and who leaves. The relationship between Zeus and the Cyclopes grows more complicated during these years. Gratitude remains. So does trust, yet the distance between them slowly widens. Zeus now carries a crown. Messengers surround him. Petitions arrive from seas, forests, and distant lands. He no longer spends entire nights beside the forge. When he speaks with the brothers, others are usually listening. Power changes the shape of friendship, not always through betrayal, sometimes simply through absence. The Cyclopes feel it. They never complain. Instead, they pour their quiet loneliness into the work. The halls become more beautiful. The gates become stronger. The forge beneath Olympus grows hotter. Every chamber carries part of their memory. In one passage, they shape the ceiling like the dark vault of Tartarus, then place hundreds of small lights across it. A prison sky transformed into stars. In another hall, they carve open windows facing the sea, recalling the first horizon they ever saw after freedom. Near the central court, they build a circular hearth. Its flame never goes out. The shape is deliberate. One fire, one center, one unbroken eye of light. Historians continue to debate whether ancient temples ever preserved direct traditions of Cyclopean builders. Yet massive stone walls across Greece and nearby lands were later called Cyclopean because people believed ordinary hands could never have raised them. The name became a compliment, strength joined with wonder. Still, an omen appears before Olympus is completed. During a clear evening, a crack forms across the newly built throne platform. No earthquake shakes the mountain. No enemy attacks. The stone simply splits. A narrow line travels from the base of Zeus's throne toward the doors of the hall. Argus kneels beside it. Steropes touches the broken edge. Brontes looks toward Zeus. The king asks what it means. No one answers with certainty. Some priests later claim the crack predicted future rebellions against Olympus. Others believed it warned that every throne contains weakness from the moment it is raised. Brontes repairs the stone, but he leaves a faint line visible. Zeus notices. "Why not hide it? So you remember it was there." The answer changes the room. For a moment, no god speaks. Then Zeus nods. The mark remains. At last Olympus stands complete. Golden light reflects from marble halls. Sacred fires burn in bronze bowls. Music moves through colonnades open to the evening air. Below, mortal villages appear tiny beside winding rivers and silver olive groves. The gods gather for their first great feast. Nectar fills shining cups. Ambrosia scents the warm air. Laughter rises beneath the stars. The Cyclopes remain near the edge of the hall. They are honored, praised, thanked. Yet they do not entirely belong. They built the home of the gods, but no throne waits for them. Their place remains beside the forge. Brontes watches Zeus seated above the assembly. Steropes listens to music echoing through chambers they shaped. Argus studies the unhidden crack beneath the throne. They have created beauty from ruin, belonging from war, light from remembered darkness. Still, a quiet question follows them as they descend toward the forge beneath Olympus. Were they truly members of this new divine family, or only the hands that made its greatness possible? The sacred fires burn brighter as they approach. Far within the flames, three shadows briefly appear and vanish. No one understands the sign, not yet, and while Olympus celebrates above, another thread of fate begins moving silently toward the makers beneath it. Morning arrives gently upon Olympus. Golden light slips between marble columns and spills across polished courtyards. Cool mountain air carries the scent of pine, laurel leaves, and distant wildflowers far below. The sea glitters beneath the early sun, while thin clouds drift lazily through the valleys. The mountain finally knows peace, or so it seems. You descend from the bright halls toward the heart of the mountain, where another world quietly awakens. The forge never sleeps, even while the gods feast above. Sacred fires continue burning beneath their feet. Warmth fills the stone corridors. Bronze tools hang neatly along ancient walls. Rivers of molten metal glow softly in channels carved by hands that understand both fire and patience. Brontes is already awake. He rarely rests for long. You find him standing before the central furnace, watching the flames rather than feeding them. His single eye reflects countless shades of gold and crimson dancing within the fire. "It speaks differently today," he murmurs. Steropes pauses beside him. Argus listens. At first, you hear nothing unusual, only the familiar crackle of burning coals, the steady breathing of the bellows, the rhythmic drip of cooling water into stone basins. Yet gradually you notice it. The fire hums, not loudly, almost like distant singing. Some ancient temple traditions believe sacred flames possessed voices that only master smiths could hear. Others regarded this as poetic symbolism, suggesting experienced craftsmen learn to judge temperature simply by sound. Perhaps both ideas contain truth. The Cyclops never separate skill from wonder. Every spark carries meaning. Their fame spreads quickly throughout Olympus. One by one, the gods begin visiting the forge not because something is broken, but because something new is desired. Athena arrives first. She carries a simple bronze spear. "I wish to understand balance," she says. "Not power, not decoration. Balance." Brontes studies the spear carefully before placing it into the sacred fire. "You already understand balance," he replies. "You seek confidence." Athena smiles faintly. She realizes he has seen beyond her request. When the spear emerges from the forge, it appears almost unchanged. Lighter, stronger, perfectly weighted. Athena lifts it effortlessly. The weapon feels less like something she carries than something that moves with her. She bows not to a king, to a craftsman. Apollo comes next. He asks for nothing made of metal. Instead, he brings a golden lyre whose voice has become dull after years of travel. Steropes does not replace a single string. He simply adjusts the wooden frame above gentle heat, allowing hidden tensions to relax. When Apollo plays again, the music fills the mountain. Even the forge grows quiet. The sacred flames seem to sway with the melody. Creation takes many forms. Not every masterpiece is forged with hammers. Hermes proves the most curious visitor. He spends hours watching Argus organize tools, metals, and unfinished pieces. Finally, he asks, "How do you always know where everything belongs?" Argus smiles. "I return every tool before I need it again." Hermes laughs. The answer sounds simple, yet he remembers it. Even the swiftest messenger discovers wisdom beneath ordinary habits. The forge becomes more than a workshop. It becomes a place where the gods come to learn patience. That transformation surprises everyone, including the Cyclops. Some afternoons no one asks for weapons. Instead, gods simply sit beside the warm furnaces, listening, watching sparks rise toward dark ceilings. The steady rhythm of hammer upon anvil slows hurried thoughts. You begin to understand why ancient blacksmiths were often treated with quiet respect. They transformed chaos into order, heat into beauty, stone into possibility. One evening, Zeus descends alone. He carries the thunderbolt wrapped in dark cloth, not because it is damaged, because he does not wish every god to see it. Brontes unwraps the weapon. Lightning still sleeps within it. Yet its light seems restless. The king notices. It grows stronger. Brontes nods slowly. So do you. Neither statement feels entirely comforting. They walk together outside the forge. Night has settled across Olympus. Stars fill the heavens. Far below, scattered fires glow from tiny mortal villages. The cool air carries the scent of cedar smoke and damp earth after evening rain. Zeus asks a question that surprises you. Did you ever hate me? Brontes answers honestly. I did not know you. Zeus waits. I hated prisons. The king lowers his gaze. For several quiet moments, neither speaks. Then Zeus asks another question. Do you trust me? Brontes does not answer immediately. He watches a meteor cross the night sky. It is easier to trust a man than a throne. The words remain with Zeus long after he leaves. Perhaps they remain with you as well. Power belongs to officers. Character belongs to people. The distinction matters. As seasons pass, the forge grows busier than ever. Sacred chariots receive stronger wheels. Temple doors are strengthened against time. Ceremonial crowns shine with impossible brilliance. Even humble farming tools requested by Demeter are shaped with extraordinary care. The Cyclops never divide their craftsmanship into worthy and unworthy tasks. Every object deserves excellence. Some researchers believe this reflected an important Greek ideal that true mastery reveals itself through consistency rather than grandeur. A perfect plough matters as much as a perfect spear. The maker honors both equally, yet not every visitor arrives seeking wisdom. Ares enters the forge with heavy footsteps. His armor still bears stains from countless battles. He asks for sharper blades, stronger shields, larger weapons. Brontes listens patiently, then quietly refuses. The sword already cuts. It could cut farther. It cuts enough. Ares grows impatient. You deny the god of war. I deny unnecessary suffering. Silence follows. The fire crackles softly between them. For a heartbeat, you wonder whether violence will erupt inside the forge itself. Instead, Ares turns away. He leaves without another word. The sacred flames burn steadily once more. Steropes watches the doorway long after the war god disappears. Not every request should be granted. The Cyclops have finally learned what imprisonment once taught them. Strength without restraint becomes fear, and fear builds prisons. One night, as autumn winds sweep across Olympus, another omen appears. The forge fire suddenly burns white, not red, not gold, pure white. The temperature does not increase. The flames simply lose all color. Arges reaches toward them. The heat feels strangely gentle. Within the pale fire, three shadows briefly appear. One carries a bow. Another kneels beside a wounded figure. The third falls silently into darkness. The vision lasts only a heartbeat. Then the flames return to crimson. None of the brothers speaks. Some surviving traditions suggest divine fires occasionally revealed fragments of fate. Others argue such stories were later additions, shaped by listeners who already knew what would happen. The Cyclops never receive certainty, only warnings, and warnings rarely explain themselves. Days later, Apollo returns to the forge. He seems unusually thoughtful. His music has become quieter, his laughter less frequent. He speaks lovingly of his son, Asclepius, whose healing gifts continue astonishing gods and mortals alike. Brontes listens with genuine warmth. He has always admired those who create rather than destroy. Asclepius heals. The Cyclops build. Perhaps they belong to the same quiet family of spirits. As Apollo departs, he pauses beside the entrance, for reasons he cannot explain. He turns back toward the sacred fire. The white flame does not return, yet the memory of it lingers. You feel it too. Some threads of destiny have already been woven too tightly to unravel. The forge remains peaceful. The mountain sleeps beneath stars. The gods believe a golden age has begun. But beneath the steady rhythm of hammer and anvil, the oldest lesson of the Cyclops quietly endures. The greatest creations often carry consequences their makers cannot yet imagine, and somewhere beyond the calm skies of Olympus, fate has already begun walking toward the forge with silent, unhurried steps. The years pass gently upon Olympus. The great battles fade into memory. Wildflowers spread across hills once blackened by war. Eagles circle peacefully above the highest cliffs. At sunrise, the marble halls glow with soft amber light, while the evening brings cool breezes carrying the fragrance of cypress, thyme, and distant seas. You begin to believe that peace has finally taken root. So do the Cyclopes. Each morning, Brontes lights the sacred forge before the first rays reach the mountain peaks. Steropes checks the great bellows with quiet care. Arges walks through the workshops, placing every hammer, chisel, and pair of tongs exactly where they belong. Their lives have found a rhythm, a simple rhythm, one that asks for little. Create, repair, serve. The forge has become the quiet heart beneath Olympus, beating steadily while the gods concern themselves with kingdoms, worshippers, and divine rivalries. Few pause to wonder who keeps that heart alive. You notice something else as the years unfold. The Cyclopes no longer dream of prisons. Instead, they dream of mountains. Sometimes Brontes wakes before dawn after seeing endless valleys filled with glowing forges where no weapons are made. Only tools, only bridges, only beautiful things. He never speaks of these dreams aloud. Yet Steropes has seen similar visions. Arges too. Perhaps suffering has taught them an unexpected lesson. Creation becomes most precious after one has lived too long surrounded by destruction. Far below Olympus, another story quietly unfolds. A young healer walks among mortals. His name is Asclepius. You never meet him directly. Instead, you hear stories carried upward by pilgrims climbing sacred paths toward the temples of the gods. A child survives a fever no physician could cure. An old shepherd walks again after years of pain. A wounded sailor rises from his bed though every hope had vanished. Again and again, the same name returns. Asclepius, Apollo's beloved son. Some traditions say his knowledge became so extraordinary that even death itself began losing its authority. The sick recovered, the dying awakened, in whispered versions of the tale. Some even claim the dead returned to life. Historians continue to debate how literally ancient listeners understood these stories. Perhaps they celebrated remarkable medicine. Perhaps they reflected humanity's oldest wish that compassion might someday become stronger than mortality. Whatever the truth, one thing becomes certain. The balance of the cosmos begins to shift. In the quiet halls beneath Olympus, the Cyclopes know nothing of these events. They continue their work. One afternoon, Athena visits the forge carrying a cracked shield. She watches Brontes repair it without speaking. Finally, she asks, "Do you ever wonder what becomes of the things you make?" Brontes smiles faintly. "Every day. And I hope they protect more than they destroy." Athena nods. She understands, perhaps better than most. Not all wisdom is learned through books. Sometimes it is learned through scars left by one's own creations. Days later, an unusual stillness settles over Olympus. The birds stop singing. Even the mountain wind seems reluctant to move. The sacred fire burns lower without any visible reason. Steropes notices first. The forge is listening. You pause. Listening. Then you hear it. Not with your ears. With something deeper. The mountain itself seems to be waiting. At sunset, dark clouds gather around the highest peaks. No rain falls. No lightning flashes. Only silence. Far away, somewhere beyond the sight of gods and giants alike. Zeus has made a terrible decision. The king of Olympus has watched Asclepius's miracles with increasing concern. If mortals cease to die, if death itself loses meaning, then the order holding heaven, earth, and the underworld together begins to unravel. Many later philosophers argued that Zeus acted not from cruelty, but from responsibility. Others believed jealousy guided his hand. Still others insisted no ruler should decide the limits of hope. The debate has never ended. Perhaps it never will. You do not witness the moment itself, only its echo. Suddenly, the thunderbolt resting beside Brontes glows with brilliant white light. No one touches it. Lightning bursts from its surface and vanishes into the evening sky. Moments later, the light disappears. Silence returns. Brontes slowly lowers his hammer. His eye narrows. Something irreversible has happened. Hours pass. Night settles across Olympus. The stars seem strangely dim. Then footsteps approach the forge. Slow, measured, heavy with grief. Apollo enters. You almost fail to recognize him. His golden hair hangs loose around his shoulders. His bow remains in his hand. But the music usually surrounding him has vanished. Even the air feels colder in his presence. No greeting passes between them. Brontes simply waits. Apollo speaks at last. My son is dead. The words are quiet, almost impossible to hear. Steropes closes his eye. Arges sets down the tool he has been holding. No one asks how. Somehow, they already know. Apollo walks toward the place where the thunderbolt rests. His fingers hover above it without touching. It was this. Not Zeus, not fate, not destiny. This, the weapon, the thing the Cyclops created with hope beside a volcanic mountain so many years ago. Grief rarely searches for complexity. It seeks something it can blame. You see the struggle unfolding within Apollo. Part of him knows Zeus chose to throw the bolt. Another part cannot bear directing all that sorrow toward the King of Heaven. The weapon seems easier, the hands that forged it easier still. Brontes steps forward. His voice remains gentle. We shaped it. Apollo does not answer. We did not choose where it fell. The silence stretches. Sacred flames crackle softly behind you. Outside, a cold wind moves through the marble columns of Olympus. Somewhere an owl calls into the darkness. Apollo's eyes fill not with tears, but with something far more dangerous. Certainty. He has already decided. Ancient storytellers preserved several versions of what followed. Some claimed Apollo confronted Zeus first. Others insisted grief drove him immediately toward the forge. Still others believed the fates themselves clouded his judgment for reasons no mortal could understand. No version removes the tragedy. Only the path leading toward it changes. Apollo finally turns away. At the entrance, he pauses. The moonlight catches the polished curve of his bow. I loved him. Brontes lowers his head. I know. Apollo disappears into the night. The forge grows strangely quiet. Even the flames seem reluctant to burn. Steropes stares toward the doorway long after the god of light has vanished. Arges quietly begins returning every tool to its proper place. Brontes walks outside alone. Above him, the stars shine with distant indifference. He remembers another ruler long ago. Uranus feared what had not yet happened. Cronus feared what prophecy promised. Now Apollo fears a world that has taken away the one person he could not bear to lose. Fear continues changing gods, just as it always has. Brontes looks toward the heavens where the thunderbolt first crossed the sky, for the first time since leaving Tartarus. A quiet unease settles deep within him, not because he fears death, but because he understands grief. And grief has begun walking toward the forge, carrying a bow no shield was ever meant to stop. Before sunrise, the forge is already awake. The sacred fires glow softly beneath the mountain, their warmth spreading through familiar stone corridors. The scent of charcoal, bronze, and warm iron fills the air. Outside, a gentle wind moves through the pine forests of Olympus. Carrying with it the freshness of the coming morning, everything appears unchanged. That is often how tragedy begins. Brontes kneels beside the central furnace, feeding the flames with carefully chosen wood from ancient olive trees, blessed by Athena herself. Sterops adjusts the great bellows until the fire breathes steadily. Arges inspects a bronze plowshare requested by Demeter for the coming harvest. No weapons today, only peaceful work. The rhythm of hammer upon anvil returns. Strike, turn, cool, lift. The sound echoes warmly through the mountain. You close your eyes for a moment. It almost resembles a heartbeat. Then the birds outside fall silent. Sterope stops working first. His single eye turns toward the entrance. The wind has changed. You notice it too. The warm mountain breeze has disappeared. Cold air flows down the corridor instead, carrying the scent of cedar and distant rain. More troubling still, it carries no sound. No footsteps, no voices, only silence. Brontes slowly places his hammer upon the anvil. No one speaks. Some warnings require no words. Far above the forge, dawn begins touching the marble halls of Olympus. The first rays of sunlight turn the columns pale gold. Priests preparing morning offerings notice a strange omen. The smoke from every sacred fire rises downward, not upward, only for a moment. Then it returns to normal, many years later. Temple keepers would remember that morning. Some believed the gods themselves had looked away from the mountain. Others thought the earth was mourning before anyone understood why. Inside the forge, another sound finally arrives. Soft footsteps, measured, unhurried. Apollo appears at the entrance. He wears no crown of laurel. No musician follows him. No song surrounds his presence. Only grief. His silver bow rests in his hand. A single arrow waits upon the string. Brontes steps forward. Not in defense, in welcome. You have returned. Apollo nods once. His face seems older than it did only a day before. Immortals do not age as mortals do, yet sorrow leaves its own marks. You can almost feel the weight pressing upon his shoulders. For several long moments, no one moves. The forge continues breathing quietly behind you. Molten bronze glows inside open furnaces. Tiny sparks drift upward before fading into darkness. Brontes speaks gently. I am sorry. Apollo closes his eyes. So am I. The words carry more meaning than either intends. Some ancient traditions insist Apollo knew the Cyclopes were innocent. Others argue grief had already overcome reason. Historians continue to debate whether the god sought justice or simply needed somewhere to place unbearable pain. Perhaps the distinction no longer mattered. Pain rarely argues like philosophy. It simply acts. Apollo lifts the bow. Steropes instinctively takes one step toward his brother. Argus grips a heavy forge hammer. Neither attacks. Neither even threatens. Brontes quietly raises one enormous hand. No. His brothers understand. Violence has already taken enough. The forge falls completely still. Even the flames seem to lower themselves. Apollo draws the string. The sound is barely audible. A quiet whisper, like a single breath taken before speaking. Brontes does not move. Instead, he looks directly into Apollo's eyes. There is no anger, only understanding. You loved him. Apollo's fingers tremble. More than the sun. Brontes nods slowly. I would have forged healing if I could. The bowstring releases. The arrow crosses the forge. It moves so swiftly you almost fail to see it. Only a flash of silver. Then silence. Brontes remains standing for one impossible heartbeat. His eye widens slightly, not with fear, but surprise. He touches the place where the arrow entered. No blood appears at first. Only light, soft golden light begins flowing through the crack, spreading across his enormous chest. It resembles molten metal escaping from a broken mold. Brontes smiles, very faintly. I always wondered. His voice grows quiet. How a star feels. The light becomes brighter. Then slowly, the great Cyclops begins turning to stone. Not ordinary stone, warm volcanic rock veined with glowing fire. The transformation moves gently through his arms, his shoulders, his face, until at last he becomes still. The first master of the divine forge stands forever beside the anvil he loved. Apollo lowers the bow. His breathing has become uneven. The certainty that carried him here begins dissolving. Grief remains. Now joined by regret, Steropes kneels beside his brother. He presses one hand against the warm stone. It still holds heat. Arges closes his eye. No words leave either of them. Some losses exist beyond language, yet destiny has not finished. Apollo draws another arrow. This time Steropes stands. He does not reach for a weapon. Instead, he walks toward the god of light. You once brought music here. Apollo's hands shake. You repaired my lyre. You played beautifully. The second arrow flies. Steropes does not fall. Lightning dances briefly across his body before freezing into shining crystal beneath his skin. Like Brontes, he slowly becomes stone. His final expression remains peaceful, as though listening to distant music no one else can hear. Apollo cannot look at him. The forge feels colder. Only Arges remains, the youngest brother, the quiet observer, the patient keeper of every tool. He bends down and carefully returns Brontes' hammer to its proper place. Then Steropes. Only afterward does he face Apollo. You will remember this, Apollo whispers. I already do. The final arrow leaves the string. Arges closes his eye before it reaches him, not from fear, from acceptance. As light spreads across his body, he speaks one last sentence. Take care of the fire. Then he too becomes silent stone. The forge no longer echoes with hammers, only with breathing. Apollo stands alone among the three statues. His bow slips from his hand. The sacred fire continues burning. It always will. For a long time he simply watches the flames. Some later poets claimed Zeus arrived soon afterward, his face filled with anger. Others believed he found Apollo alone hours later, still unable to leave the forge. Whatever happened between king and son belongs to another story. This story remains with the Cyclopes. Their work tables stay exactly as they left them. An unfinished plough rests upon the anvil. A kettle of cooling bronze hardens beside the furnace. 3 drinking cups remain where yesterday's conversation ended. Nothing moves except the fire. Generations later, priests visiting ancient smithing shrines sometimes claim they could still hear 3 hammers striking beneath the earth during quiet nights. No one ever found the smiths, only the sound. Historians cannot explain these traditions. Perhaps they were simply stories, or perhaps extraordinary craftsmanship leaves echoes that outlive the craftsman. You remain inside the silent forge as evening slowly settles across Olympus. Outside, the gods continue their immortal lives. The seasons will change, heroes will rise, kingdoms will fall. Yet beneath the mountain, 3 stone figures stand forever beside an eternal flame. They forged the weapons that shaped the cosmos. They built the halls of heaven. They asked for almost nothing. And in the end, they died not because they created evil, but because grief could no longer distinguish between the hand that forged the thunderbolt and the hand that threw it. As darkness gently fills the forge, the sacred fire burns on without its guardians. Its warm glow reaches the faces of the 3 silent statues. For just an instant, the light makes them seem almost alive. Then the mountain becomes quiet once more, yet far beyond Olympus. Another family of one-eyed giants still walks beneath open skies. Their story has only just begun. The forge grows quiet, not empty, quiet. You remain beneath Olympus for a long while, watching the sacred fire burn before the three silent figures of Brontes, Sterops, and Arges. Warm light still dances across their stone faces. Shadows move gently over the walls they once filled with the sound of patient hammers. The fire has kept its promise. It did not die with its guardians, yet something precious has vanished from the mountain. The gods notice it in different ways. Athena descends to the forge and places her repaired spear beside Brontes for a single evening. She speaks no prayer. She simply stands in silence before carrying the weapon away again. Apollo does not return, not for many years. Some say he could not bear the sight of the workshop. Others believed he visited in secret during moonless nights, leaving fresh laurel branches beside the eternal flame before disappearing before dawn. No one truly knows. The forge keeps its own memories. Zeus visits only once. He stands before the three stone forms while thunder murmurs beyond the mountain peaks. His hand rests upon the thunderbolt the Cyclops forged for him so long ago. For the first time since becoming king, the weapon feels unbearably heavy. Power often reveals its true weight only after those who helped create it are gone. He orders that no one disturb the forge. No tool is to be moved, no furnace extinguished. The sacred fire will remain forever. It is a small act, perhaps too small. Yet even kings cannot repair every loss. The years continue their quiet journey. Mortals build villages beneath olive trees. Ships cross bright seas between scattered islands. Children grow up hearing stories of the great Titan War as though it belonged to another age. The names of Brontes, Steropes, and Arges slowly become sacred memories known mostly to priests and poets. But the name Cyclops does not disappear. Instead, it changes, far from Olympus, across restless seas where white waves break against lonely cliffs. Another story begins unfolding. You leave the mountain behind. The journey carries you over glittering waters scented with salt and seaweed. Dolphins rise briefly beside your vessel before vanishing beneath the surface again. Gulls circle overhead, their cries carried away by the wind. Days pass, perhaps weeks. At last, dark islands rise from the horizon. Their shores are steep and rocky. Volcanic mountains tower above deep green forests. Thin streams tumble down black cliffs before disappearing into hidden coves. Very few ships come here. Those that do rarely stay. Local fishermen speak cautiously of enormous footprints pressed into soft earth after heavy rain. Shepherds claim to hear distant voices echoing across valleys at dusk. Travelers tell stories of smoke rising from caves where no village has ever stood. Some dismiss these tales. Others refuse to sail these waters entirely. As evening approaches, you step onto the island itself. The ground feels warm beneath your sandals. Wild herbs grow between dark stones, releasing the fragrance of thyme and oregano beneath each careful step. Sheep graze peacefully along grassy slopes. Olive trees twist toward the fading sunlight. Nothing appears frightening. Nothing seems monstrous until you notice the footprints. Each one is broader than a shield. Fresh, you follow them carefully. They lead upward toward enormous caves overlooking the sea. The entrance alone is tall enough for ancient pine trees to stand upright within it. Inside, the air is pleasantly cool. You smell fresh milk, cheese, wood smoke, dry grass gathered for bedding. Large clay jars line one wall. Woven baskets overflow with figs and wild berries. Stone troughs hold clear spring water. Someone lives here, not as a beast, as a shepherd. You hear him before you see him. A low melody, simple, gentle, almost lonely. Then he appears. He is immense. His shoulders are as broad as an ox cart. Thick curls fall around a weathered face darkened by years beneath the sun. At the center of his forehead rests one great eye, clear and watchful. You instinctively remember Brontes. The resemblance is unmistakable, yet there are differences. This giant carries no hammer. His hands bear the rough calluses of tending animals rather than shaping bronze. Across one shoulder hangs a shepherd's staff cut from a living tree. Behind him follows a flock of sheep so large that they seem almost like drifting clouds across the hillside. He pauses. His single eye studies you quietly. There is curiosity, not hostility. Some ancient traditions called these island dwellers the children of Poseidon and the sea nymph Thoosa. Others insisted they descended from an older race entirely, separate from the divine smiths of Olympus. Historians continue to debate whether Greek storytellers gradually merged two different traditions beneath one familiar name. Perhaps that uncertainty is the point. Names survive, origins become blurred. The shepherd turns away without speaking. You follow at a respectful distance. His life unfolds with remarkable simplicity. Each morning he leads his sheep toward fresh grass growing along volcanic slopes. At noon, he rests beneath ancient fig trees, while warm sea winds move through silver leaves overhead. By evening, he returns to the cave, carrying fresh milk in enormous stone vessels. There are no cities here, no laws, no assemblies, no temples, only families living far apart from one another across the island. Each cave forms its own little world. The giant seems content, yet contentment is not the same as happiness. As twilight settles across the sea, he sits alone near the cave entrance. The sheep sleep nearby. Stars slowly emerge overhead. He watches them for a long time. You begin to notice something familiar: loneliness. Not the loneliness of imprisonment, the loneliness of distance. No music drifts from neighboring valleys. No laughter echoes between homes. No friends arrive carrying stories from distant lands. His world is peaceful, but it is also isolated. The old patterns quietly return. The first Cyclopes were feared because they possessed extraordinary gifts. These later Cyclopes remain apart because they possess almost no connection with the wider world. Different lives, the same solitude. One night, the giant awakens suddenly. He walks to the mouth of the cave and looks toward the eastern horizon. A strange light flickers above the sea. Not lightning, not moonlight, a single bright star burning unusually low above the water. He watches until dawn. Then the light disappears. Island elders would later remember that strange star differently. Some believed it warned that strangers were approaching. Others claimed it marked the attention of Poseidon himself, forever watching over his forgotten children. The shepherd never learns its meaning. Neither do you, but somewhere beyond the horizon, sails have already begun moving across the wine-dark sea. A weary king is searching for home. His name has not yet reached these lonely shores. The shepherd does not know that destiny is approaching with clever words instead of honest greetings. He cannot imagine that a single evening will one day define his entire existence. For now, he remains only what he has always been: a solitary giant, a keeper of sheep, a child of an old and uncertain bloodline, and beneath the endless stars, his one great eye continues watching the sea, unaware that the next ship appearing on the horizon will change the way the world remembers every Cyclops forever. The morning begins with bells, not temple bells, small bronze bells fastened around the necks of sheep. Their soft ringing drifts across the hillside as the flock moves through silver grass wet with dawn. Sea mist clings to the lower slopes, far below. Waves strike black volcanic cliffs with a slow and patient rhythm. You walk beside the giant shepherd. His name is Polyphemus. The name will one day cross the ancient world. Poets will speak it beside firelight. Sailors will whisper it before entering unfamiliar waters. Children will hear it and imagine a monster waiting inside a dark cave. But this morning, there is no monster, only a shepherd beginning another quiet day. Polyphemus carries a staff cut from the trunk of a young pine. He uses it gently, guiding straying lambs away from steep ravines. When one small animal struggles across loose stone, he lifts it against his chest and carries it until the ground becomes level. His enormous hand could crush it easily. Instead, his touch remains careful. The sheep trust him. That detail survives even in stories determined to portray him as savage. Perhaps because tenderness is difficult to erase completely. The island knows his footsteps. Birds rise from the grass when he approaches, then settle again after he passes. Wild goats watch from rocky ledges. Springs hidden beneath the hills seem to flow more loudly near his path. This is his world. Every valley is familiar. Every cave has a name known only to him. Every changing wind carries information. A damp breeze from the west promises rain. A warm southern gust carries dust from distant lands. A sharp wind from the sea warns of storms building beyond the horizon. Polyphemus needs no map. The island lives inside his memory. Yet beyond these shores, he knows almost nothing. He has never walked through a marble city, never stood in a crowded marketplace, never heard hundreds of voices speaking together inside a theater. He has seen ships from a distance, their sails white against the blue sea. But few have approached his coast. Those that did rarely remained. The strangers saw his size, his eye, his rough clothing made from animal skins. Then fear made the decision for them. They sailed away. Polyphemus learned something from those departures. The wider world did not wish to know him, so he stopped wishing to know it. Isolation gradually becomes pride. This is how loneliness often protects itself. It begins by saying, "I am unwanted." Then, after enough years, it says, "I need no one." At midday, you rest with him beneath an ancient olive tree twisted by wind. The air smells of dry grass, warm milk, and crushed thyme. Cicadas sing from hidden branches. The sea stretches below like polished bronze beneath the sun. Polyphemus eats bread baked upon heated stone. He breaks off a piece and places it beside you. Hospitality, in its simplest form. No ceremony, no questions, only food offered beneath shade. This may surprise those who know only the later story. Ancient Greek tradition placed enormous value upon hospitality. A stranger was to be welcomed, fed, and protected before being asked his name. Zeus himself guarded this sacred custom. Yet the customs of cities do not always reach isolated shores. Polyphemus has never been taught the rituals expected by palace halls and harbour towns. He knows the ethics of shepherds instead. Protect the flock, respect the seasons, share when trust exists, defend what enters your home without permission. Two worlds are moving toward collision. Neither fully understands the other. That is what makes the coming tragedy feel inevitable. In the afternoon, dark clouds gather above the island. Polyphemus pauses beside a narrow stream and looks toward the sky. Thunder rolls far away. He listens carefully. The storm seems ordinary at first. Then a second sound follows. A voice, low, distant, almost buried beneath the wind. "Beware the man of many names." Polyphemus turns. No one stands nearby. The sheep continue grazing. Rain begins falling in large, warm drops. The voice does not return. Some traditions claimed Polyphemus had once received a prophecy from a seer named Telemus. The warning foretold that a man called Odysseus would blind him. Polyphemus reportedly laughed. The name sounded unimpressive. He imagined a mighty warrior taller than ordinary men, perhaps carrying a shining spear or divine sword. He never imagined cunning. No prophecy ever explains enough. That is why people so often misunderstand them. Polyphemus has heard the warning before. You see its memory in the way his eye narrows, yet he dismisses it again. He is too strong. His cave is too secure. His father is Poseidon, ruler of every sea. What mortal could truly threaten him? Pride enters quietly, not the loud pride of kings displaying crowns. The quieter pride born from never having been challenged. Polyphemus has survived storms, earthquakes, hunger, and isolation. He has mistaken survival for invulnerability. The rain becomes heavier. You return with him toward the cave. The flock moves quickly now, bells ringing through the mist. Cold water runs down the giant's shoulders. Mud gathers beneath his feet, carrying the scent of wet earth and crushed herbs. At the cave entrance, he counts every animal, one by one. No sheep is forgotten. Inside, he lights a fire. Warm orange light fills the vast chamber. Shadows climb the high walls. He milks the ewes into enormous wooden bowls, then carefully separates curds for cheese. His movements are practiced, patient, almost peaceful. The storm continues outside. Waves crash against the cliffs. Wind howls through narrow openings in the rock. Then, beneath the sound of rain, another noise reaches you. Wood striking stone, a ship, somewhere near the shore. Polyphemus pauses. He turns toward the cave entrance. His eye remains fixed upon the darkness outside. The prophecy returns to him, the man of many names. For a moment, caution enters his expression. Then it passes. Ships have broken against these rocks before. Sailors sometimes wander inland looking for water or food. Most leave when they understand whose land they have entered. Polyphemus closes the cave with a massive stone, not from fear, from habit. The boulder seals the entrance with a deep grinding sound. No ordinary group of men could move it. The sheep settle. The fire burns low. Polyphemus lies upon a bed of dry grass. Soon his breathing becomes slow and steady, but you remain awake. Through a narrow crack near the cave roof, lightning flashes above the sea. For one brief instant, you see figures moving along the distant shore. Small, human, carrying weapons. Their leader stands apart from the others, watching the cliffs with unusual stillness. He is tired from years of war. He is desperate to return home. He has survived by intelligence more often than strength. And he has already learned that survival sometimes demands deception. The island does not know his name yet. Polyphemus sleeps. His one great eye remains closed. Outside, the strangers begin climbing toward the cave. Two kinds of loneliness are about to meet. One belongs to a shepherd who trusts no civilization. The other belongs to a wandering king who has lost nearly everything except his cunning. Neither man understands what the encounter will cost. And above them, hidden behind storm clouds, Poseidon watches the sea while an old prophecy quietly prepares to fulfill itself. The storm passes before dawn. Rainwater still runs through cracks in the black cliffs. The sea remains restless, striking the shore with heavy waves that leave white foam across the rocks. You stand near the mouth of the cave as the first grey light reaches the island. Polyphemus is gone. He has already rolled aside the enormous entrance stone and led his sheep toward the upper pastures. Their bells fade slowly into the mist. The cave is open, unwatched. From the shoreline below, figures begin climbing toward it. There are 12 men. Their clothing is stained with salt. Their faces are lean from hunger and years of travel. Bronze swords hang at their sides, though most move with the caution of men too tired to seek another battle. At their front walks Odysseus. He does not appear larger than the others. That is important. The prophecy promised Polyphemus a dangerous man, and the Cyclops imagined strength. Instead, destiny sends intelligence. Odysseus pauses outside the cave. He studies the enormous footprints pressed into the wet earth. He notices the wooden bowls, the baskets, and the bundles of dry grass stacked near the entrance. His companions urge him to take what they can and leave. There is cheese, milk, young animals, enough food to restore their strength, but Odysseus refuses. He wants to meet the cave's owner. Perhaps he hopes for gifts. Perhaps pride guides him. Perhaps, after years among warriors and kings, he assumes every stranger understands the same laws of hospitality. Ancient storytellers often admired Odysseus for curiosity. They also understood its dangers. You follow the men inside. The air smells of smoke, wool, and fresh cheese. Enormous shelves hold wheels of curd larger than shields. Stone jars stand filled with milk. The sailors stare in wonder. Everything here is simple, yet everything is made for a giant. They light a small fire and wait. Hours pass. Outside, sunlight moves across the island. The cave remains cool beneath your bare feet. The men eat cautiously. Though Odysseus seems uneasy, he keeps looking toward the entrance. As evening approaches, the sheep bells return. Then comes the sound of footsteps. Slow, heavy. The entire cave trembles with each one. Polyphemus enters carrying a bundle of firewood upon one shoulder. He does not notice the strangers immediately. First, he guides the flock inside. Then he rolls the great stone across the entrance. The cave closes. Darkness surrounds you. Polyphemus drops the wood. The crash sends sparks from the visitor's small fire. He turns. His single eye catches the movement. For one moment, no one speaks. The sailors seem impossibly small beneath his gaze. Polyphemus steps closer. "Who are you?" His voice fills the chamber. Odysseus answers carefully. He says they are Greeks returning from Troy. He speaks of storms and wandering seas. Then he appeals to Zeus, guardian of strangers. The name changes Polyphemus's expression, not to fear, to irritation. The customs of distant kings mean little here. He has lived without temples, assemblies, or royal law. His father rules the sea, and no stranger has ever taught him to kneel before another god's expectations. Polyphemus asks where their ship lies. The question sounds casual. Odysseus recognizes the danger. He lies. He says Poseidon shattered the vessel upon the rocks. The Cyclops watches him closely. Two minds now measure each other. One trusts strength, the other trusts deception. No host welcomes the men. No guest offers honesty. The sacred laws of hospitality have already begun to collapse. Then Polyphemus reaches down. What follows will define him for generations. His enormous hand closes around two sailors. Their cries echo through the cave. The remaining men draw their swords, but Odysseus stops them. If they kill the giant, no one can move the entrance stone. That realization becomes another prison. Polyphemus eats. The story has been repeated so often that the horror can feel distant. Yet here, inside the firelit cave, there is nothing heroic about it. Only shock, grief, helplessness. The Cyclops is no longer merely an isolated shepherd. He has crossed a boundary. Why? Ancient listeners disagreed. Some saw simple savagery. Others believed the strangers had violated his home first. No interpretation excuses what happens, but the uncertainty matters. Monsters are often created at the moment fear, pride, and misunderstanding become violence. Polyphemus lies down after eating. Soon, his breathing grows deep. Odysseus draws his sword. He could strike the sleeping Cyclops. Again, the entrance stone stops him. Strength cannot solve this problem. Only patience can. By morning, Polyphemus removes the stone and releases the sheep. He blocks the entrance with his body, touching each animal as it passes to ensure no man escapes. Then he seals the cave again. More sailors die. Their absence hangs heavily over the survivors. Odysseus says little, but his eyes have changed. This is no longer curiosity. It is calculation. You watch him study the cave, the firewood, the jars, the giant's habits. At last, he notices an olive trunk lying near the wall. Polyphemus intended it as a future staff. To the sailors, it resembles the mast of a ship. Odysseus forms a plan. The men cut a section from the trunk. They sharpen one end. Then they hide it beneath straw. All day, they wait. No prophecy guides them, only desperation. When Polyphemus returns that evening, Odysseus approaches with a bowl of dark wine. The wine came from a priest named Maron, a gift preserved through countless dangers. Its scent fills the cave. Rich grapes, sweet resin, a memory of civilized feasts. Polyphemus drinks. He has never tasted anything so powerful. He asks for more. Odysseus pours again. The Cyclops laughs. For the first time, the cave almost feels friendly. That illusion makes the moment more unsettling. Polyphemus asks the stranger's name. Odysseus answers with one word. Nobody. The giant repeats it. Nobody. A strange name. A clever name. A name designed not to reveal, but to erase. Polyphemus promises to eat nobody last. He believes this is a gift. Then the wine overcomes him. He falls backward. The cave shakes beneath his weight. The survivors move quickly. They place the sharpened olive wood into the fire. The point glows red. Smoke fills the chamber. Odysseus and his men lift it together. They approach the sleeping giant. For one heartbeat, Polyphemus stirs. Perhaps some forgotten warning reaches him. Perhaps the prophecy speaks one final time. Too late. The burning stake drives into his eye. The scream that follows seems to tear the island open. Polyphemus rises blindly, striking the walls with both hands. Sheep scatter in terror. Stone jars shatter. Milk spreads across the floor. Outside, neighboring Cyclops hear his cries. They gather beyond the sealed entrance. Who is hurting you, they call. Polyphemus answers through agony. Nobody. The others hesitate. If nobody harms him, then perhaps sickness or divine punishment has come. They leave. Odysseus's lie has become a weapon more effective than any sword. By dawn, Polyphemus sits beside the entrance, blood drying across his face. His world has vanished. The island he knew through sight must now be learned through touch, scent, and sound. Still, he understands that the men will try to escape. He rolls aside the stone and feels each sheep passing beneath his hands. Odysseus has anticipated this. The sailors cling beneath the animals. The largest ram carries Odysseus. Polyphemus rests one hand upon its back. He speaks softly to it. He wonders why it walks last. He wonders whether it mourns its master's pain. For a moment, the monster disappears. Only loneliness remains. The ram passes outside. Odysseus reaches the shore. His men push the ship into the waves. They have escaped. They have also changed the Cyclops forever. Yet pride is not finished with either of them. From the safety of the sea, Odysseus turns toward the cliffs. He cannot bear to remain nobody. He shouts his true name. Polyphemus hears it. The prophecy becomes clear at last. Not a mighty warrior, not a giant. Odysseus, the man of many ways. The blinded shepherd lifts his face toward the sound. And in that instant, his grief becomes a curse powerful enough to follow one king across the entire sea. The ship moves farther from shore. Oars enter the water together, then rise again, dripping silver beneath the morning light. The surviving sailors breathe quickly. Some laugh from relief. Others remain silent, still hearing the screams inside the cave. Behind them, Polyphemus stands among the rocks. Blood darkens one side of his face. His great eye will never open again. The sea wind touches his wound with cold salt. Each breath carries pain. Each wave striking cliffs seems louder than before. because sound has suddenly become the shape of his world. You remain beside him. He turns his head toward the departing ship. Odysseus has revealed his name. That mistake matters until this moment. The Cyclops knew only that nobody had blinded him. Now the stranger possesses an identity, a homeland, and a story that can be followed. Pride has given vengeance a direction. Polyphemus bends down and grips an enormous rock. His fingers search its rough surface. He judges its weight through touch, then listens carefully to the sailors shouting across the water. He throws. The stone tears through the air. It strikes the sea near the ship, raising a wall of water so high that the vessel nearly turns back towards shore. The sailors cry out. They beg Odysseus to remain silent. He does not. The wandering king shouts again, declaring that Polyphemus should tell anyone who asks that Odysseus of Ithaca blinded him. The words travel clearly over the waves. Odysseus believes he is claiming victory. Instead, he is completing a prophecy. Polyphemus reaches for another stone. He listens, measures, throws. This time, the rock lands behind the vessel. The force of the wave drives the ship farther toward open water. The escape continues, yet neither man has truly won. Odysseus has survived, but he has lost companions and revealed his name. Polyphemus remains alive, but his eye and peaceful solitude are gone. Every choice has left a wound. The ship becomes smaller in the distance. Polyphemus can no longer hear the individual voices. Only the creaking of wood, the beating of oars, the faint slap of waves against the hull. Then even those sounds fade. Silence returns to the shore. Not the old silence. The island once felt familiar and protective. Now it feels immeasurably large. Polyphemus turns toward the hillside. He knows the path to his cave by memory. Still, the first steps are uncertain. His staff strikes the ground. Stone, grass, loose earth. He moves slowly. The sheep gather around him, their bells ringing softly in the warm air. Some press against his legs, others walk ahead, then return as though unsure how to guide him. The largest ram remains closest. Polyphemus rests one hand upon its back. For the first time in his life, he must be led by the creatures he once led. There is humiliation in this, but also trust. The relationship between shepherd and flock changes immediately. Strength no longer moves in only one direction. You follow them upward. The scent of time remains the same. The wind still carries sea salt. Cicadas still sing among the olive trees. Yet without sight, every familiar thing becomes mysterious. Polyphemus recognizes trees by the sound of leaves. He knows springs by their cool breath. He finds the cave through echoes returning from its entrance. Loss forces him to learn his world again. That is one consequence Odysseus never witnesses. Ancient poets often ended their interest in Polyphemus once the hero escaped. The Cyclops remained behind, fixed forever in a single moment of rage. But a life does not end when a hero leaves it. Pain continues, so does change. Inside the cave, the destruction is greater than he expected. Broken jars lie beneath his feet. Sour milk fills shallow hollows in the floor. The fire has nearly died. The sharpened olive stake still gives off a faint scent of burned wood and blood. Polyphemus reaches toward it. His hand stops before touching. The memory is too near. That night, he does not sleep. He sits at the cave entrance beneath a sky he can no longer see. The stars remain above him. The moonlight continues touching the sea. He knows this only because cold air changes when darkness settles, and because the sheep become quiet around him. You sit beside him as grief begins searching for somewhere to go. At first, it turns inward. He remembers every warning. The prophecy of Telemus, the strange star above the sea, the voice inside the storm. He dismissed them all because he expected danger to arrive looking powerful. Would things have changed if he had listened? No oracle answers. Prophecy is cruel that way. It reveals enough to haunt you afterward. Then grief turns outward, toward Odysseus, toward the ship, toward every distant city that taught men to speak beautifully while hiding their intentions. Polyphemus rises before dawn. He walks toward a cliff overlooking the sea. Each step is slow, guided by his staff and the sound of waves below. There, he lifts both arms. He calls to his father, Poseidon. The name rolls across the island like distant thunder. The sea changes. Waves become heavier. Wind circles the cliff. Clouds gather over the water, though the morning had begun clear. Polyphemus speaks carefully. He does not ask that Odysseus die immediately. His curse is more precise. If fate allows the king to return home, let that return be late. Let him lose every companion. Let him arrive broken. Let him find sorrow waiting in his own house. The prayer is terrible because it is patient. Polyphemus wants Odysseus to understand prolonged loss, the same kind now beginning upon this island. Some traditions claim Poseidon answered because he loved his son deeply. Others suggest the sea god acted from wounded pride, angered that a mortal had harmed his bloodline. Another interpretation survives. Perhaps Poseidon heard not merely a curse, but the plea of a child who had never before asked his father for anything. The sea darkens. A wave strikes the cliff with enormous force. Salt spray reaches Polyphemus's face. He takes this as an answer. Far away, Odysseus sees clouds gathering behind his ship. He does not yet understand, but destiny has changed direction. The curse will follow him past storms, monsters, strange islands, and the halls of the dead. It will stretch his journey across years. A moment of pride will become a decade of consequence. This is how Polyphemus shapes the wider myth, not through victory, through pain powerful enough to alter another man's fate. Yet the curse changes Polyphemus as well. Before Odysseus, he wished only to be left alone. Afterward, he begins listening for every sail, every unfamiliar voice, every footstep near the cave. Isolation becomes suspicion. The shore becomes a boundary. His fear of strangers hardens into hatred. This is another kind of blindness, one the olive stake did not create by itself. Seasons pass. Polyphemus learns to tend the flock without sight. He counts animals by touch. He recognizes each bell. He knows individual sheep by the texture of wool beneath his fingers. His hearing grows astonishingly sharp. He can detect rain hours before clouds reach the island. He can hear a fishing boat beyond the horizon. He can recognize the largest ram by its breathing alone. Loss has not made him helpless. It has made him different. One night, he dreams of Brontes, Steropes, and Arges. He does not know their names. He sees 3 one-eyed giants standing beside a white fire beneath a mountain. None speaks. One holds a hammer, another carries lightning. The third points toward a broken doorway. When Polyphemus wakes, the cave smells faintly of hot metal. No forge exists nearby. Some believed this dream linked the shepherd Cyclops to their ancient divine namesakes. Others dismissed it as a later attempt to unite separate legends. Still, the image remains: 3 creators in light, 1 wounded shepherd in darkness, all remembered by what others feared in them. At dawn, Polyphemus returns to the cliff. The sea is calm. No ship appears. Odysseus has vanished beyond the horizon, already entering the long suffering shaped by the curse. Polyphemus listens to the waves. He feels no triumph. Revenge rarely brings the peace it promises. Only waiting, only distance, only the knowledge that somewhere across the sea, another lonely man is being carried farther from home, and though neither can see the other now, their lives remain bound together by one wound, one name, and one prayer the ocean has not forgotten. Many years pass. Storms come and go across the Aegean. Kingdoms celebrate victories before fading into memory. Children become parents, and parents become names carved into weathered stone. Yet one story refuses to disappear. Wherever sailors gather beside evening fires, someone eventually speaks of the one-eyed giant. Each telling grows a little different. Each generation adds another detail. The cave becomes darker, the giant becomes larger, the screams become louder. Stories rarely remain still. Like waves, they reshape every shore they touch. You travel now from lonely islands to bustling Greek harbors. Fishing boats crowd the water. Merchants bargain over amphorae filled with olive oil and wine. Travelers exchange news from distant cities while children chase one another through narrow streets. Here, the tale of Polyphemus has already become legend. A young sailor gestures dramatically with his hands. I heard the Cyclops was taller than the cliffs. Another laughs. My grandfather swore he had 2 rows of teeth. An old merchant shakes his head. No. He could smell a man from 20 miles away. The listeners nod. No one asks whether these things are true. Truth is no longer the purpose. The story has become something else. A warning, a thrill, a memory transformed into entertainment. This is how myths begin to change. Not because people wish to deceive, but because imagination quietly fills the spaces left by uncertainty. You remember the shepherd beneath the olive tree, the careful hands lifting frightened lambs, the evenings spent watching stars above a peaceful island. Those moments have almost vanished from public memory. Only the cave remains, only the violence, only the eye. History often remembers people by the worst day of their lives. The same happens to monsters. Ancient poets understood something profound about fear. The creatures haunting Greek imagination rarely came from distant worlds. They usually lived at the edge of familiar ones, across a narrow sea, beyond the next mountain, inside forests where roads ended. The unknown always waits just beyond certainty. Perhaps that is why monsters endure. They give shape to uncertainty itself. Yet when you look carefully at Polyphemus, another question quietly emerges. Was he born a monster, or did fear slowly make him one? The answer is not simple. He committed terrible acts. Nothing can erase them. The sailors who entered his cave never returned home. Families waited in vain for fathers, sons, and brothers. That suffering remains real. But another truth exists beside it. Polyphemus had spent a lifetime apart from every human society. He knew neither hospitality nor diplomacy. He had learned that strangers almost always fled from him. Isolation shaped him long before Odysseus arrived. The encounter between them did not create tragedy alone. It revealed years already hidden beneath silence. Some philosophers in later centuries reflected upon this very question. Could civilization itself create monsters by abandoning those who seem different? The myths offer no direct answer. They simply invite reflection. As you continue your journey through Greece, you begin noticing something curious. The Cyclops appears everywhere, not in person, in stone. Above city gates, enormous walls rise from the earth. Their boulders are so immense that later Greeks refused to believe ordinary people could have lifted them. They invent an explanation. Surely the Cyclops built these, even today. Archaeologists refer to these massive Bronze Age fortifications as Cyclopean walls, not because giant builders truly placed every stone, but because the masonry seemed beyond ordinary human ability. Wonder naturally seeks extraordinary creators. The one-eyed giant becomes a symbol of impossible craftsmanship. Here again, memory divides. One tradition remembers the divine smiths beneath Olympus. Another remembers the shepherd who met Odysseus. Both wear the same name. Both become larger than history. The image spreads even farther. Potters paint cyclopes upon black figure vases. Sculptors carve their single eye into temple decorations. Playwrights place them upon theatrical stages. One famous comic drama even portrays Polyphemus arguing with clever visitors in language that makes audiences laugh rather than tremble. Fear slowly transforms into culture. Generation after generation reshapes the giant until he becomes whatever each age requires. Sometimes terrifying, sometimes foolish, sometimes strangely sympathetic, perhaps all three at once. Meanwhile, far from crowded cities, the real island continues its quiet existence. Sheep still graze along the volcanic slopes. The sea still crashes against black cliffs. Olive trees continue twisting beneath the wind. Whether Polyphemus himself survives into old age depends upon which ancient source you choose to follow. Some traditions say he lived for many years, tending his flock without sight. Others claim he later fell in love with the sea nymph Galatea, whose heart belonged to another. Still others weave entirely different endings around his name. The uncertainty feels appropriate. Myths rarely offer one conclusion. They offer possibilities. One evening, you return once more to the lonely shore where everything changed. The cave remains. Its entrance faces the sea exactly as before. Inside, the silence feels different now. The broken jars are gone. Fresh straw covers the floor. The fire burns quietly. Someone still lives here, or perhaps someone once did. It is impossible to know. You walk toward the place where Odysseus heated the olive stake. Only ashes remain. Time has softened even this wound. Outside, waves continue their endless conversation with the rocks. The sea remembers every voyage. It judges none of them. As twilight deepens, you imagine two figures standing upon opposite shores. Odysseus, forever rowing toward home. Polyphemus, forever listening for ships. Each believes the other changed his destiny. Perhaps both are right. The greatest myths rarely choose a single hero or villain. Instead, they show two wounded lives colliding beneath forces neither fully understands. Prophecy, pride, fear, loneliness. The ancient Greeks understood these were stronger than bronze, stronger than kings, even stronger than monsters. You lift your eyes toward the stars appearing above the island. Somewhere beyond them lies the forge where Brontes, Steropes, and Argus once shaped lightning for the gods. Somewhere below rests the earth from which Gaia first brought one-eyed beings into existence. Between those beginnings and endings stretches the long journey of the Cyclopes. Creators, prisoners, builders, shepherds, outcasts, legends. Perhaps that is why they continue to fascinate us. Because when we strip away the enormous size, the single eye, and the impossible strength, something unexpectedly familiar remains: the desire to belong, the fear of being rejected, the temptation to answer hurt with more hurt, the hope that someone might see beyond appearances. For all their strangeness, the Cyclopes sometimes resemble humanity more than humanity wishes to admit. And so, as the evening wind carries the scent of salt and wild thyme across the quiet shore, one final question lingers beside the fading light. When ancient storytellers asked us to fear the Cyclops, were they really asking us to fear the giant, or the loneliness that can slowly turn any heart into one? The years drift onward like smoke. Empires rise beyond the Aegean. New temples are built. Old kings become forgotten names. Sailors who once heard tales of Polyphemus grow old enough to tell those same stories to their grandchildren. Yet somewhere beneath every forge, a fire continues to burn. You leave the lonely island behind once more and return to the workshops of the ancient world. The sound reaches you before the buildings do. Hammer, anvil, hammer, anvil. The rhythm is slower than a heartbeat, steadier than the tide. Every village has its smith. Every kingdom depends upon one. Without them, there are no plows to break the earth, no nails to hold ships together, no hinges for temple doors, no bronze helmets, No iron knives, no horseshoes, no anchors. Civilization itself is shaped by fire. The ancient Greeks understood this. To them, metalworking was almost miraculous. A black stone entered the furnace. A shining blade emerged. How could ordinary people transform Earth itself? Surely something divine hid within the flames. And so the memory of the Cyclopes never remained confined to myth alone. It lived wherever sparks flew into the darkness. A young apprentice watches his master place iron into glowing coals. The metal begins as dull grey. Slowly it becomes crimson, then orange. Finally, almost white. The apprentice asks a question. How do you know when it is ready? The old smith smiles. The fire tells you. No one hears it except those who learn to listen. You cannot help remembering Brontes standing before the first divine furnace beneath Olympus. His movements were almost identical. Patient, measured, never hurried. Thousands of years separate the mortal craftsman from the mythical giant. Yet the gesture remains the same. Some traditions claimed the first human blacksmiths received their knowledge from the Cyclopes themselves. Others believe the divine smiths merely inspired Hephaestus, who then shared the craft with humanity. No surviving source agrees completely, but they all preserve one central idea. Skill is a gift meant to be passed forward, never hoarded. That belief mattered deeply in Greek culture. A forge was not simply a place where metal changed. It was a place where experience moved from one generation to the next. An apprentice learned by watching, then practicing, then failing, then trying again, exactly as the Cyclopes themselves had done while shaping the thunderbolt. The greatest creations rarely appear with the first strike of the hammer. Outside the workshop, farmers wait patiently for repaired tools. A fisherman carries a broken anchor. A mother brings a bent cooking pot. A soldier needs a damaged spearhead restored before the next campaign. The smith serves every one of them. Warriors often receive the glory. Craftsmen make glory possible. It is an old truth, one that history sometimes forgets. The Cyclopes remind us of it. As evening settles, the forge grows warmer. The smell of charcoal fills the room. Tiny sparks rise through the smoke like golden insects disappearing into the night. The old smith pauses before the fire, without speaking. He places one small piece of bread beside the furnace. The apprentice watches curiously. Why? The old man shrugs. My grandfather always did, and his grandfather before him. It is polite. To whom the old smith looks into the flames. I don't know anymore. Perhaps he truly does not know. Or perhaps memory has simply outlived explanation. Across Greece, little customs like this quietly survived. A whispered greeting before lighting the furnace. A moment of silence before striking the first blow. A tiny offering left beside warm coals. Scholars debate whether these practices preserved distant echoes of older religious traditions, connected with divine craftsmen. Proof is impossible. Yet the similarities remain intriguing. Sometimes traditions survive long after people forget why they began. The Cyclops become part of that invisible inheritance, not through temples, not through official festivals, through habit, through work, through respect for fire. As centuries pass, another change quietly unfolds. Iron slowly replaces bronze across much of the Greek world. The furnaces burn hotter. The labor becomes harder. The rewards become greater. Entire kingdoms grow stronger because ordinary craftsmen master extraordinary techniques. Once again, the mythical image of the Cyclops changes. He no longer represents only impossible strength. He becomes a symbol of mastery earned through discipline. Strength alone never forged the thunderbolt. Knowledge did. Patience did. Practice did. That lesson continues speaking long after the stories themselves become uncertain. You travel north into mountain villages where volcanic stone still bears strange glass-like scars left by ancient eruptions. Children collect oddly shaped rocks and ask their grandparents where they came from. The oldest woman in one village smiles before answering. The one-eyed giants were working late. The children laugh. They have heard the story many times. Whenever lightning strikes a distant peak, whenever smoke rises unexpectedly from the mountain, whenever the earth trembles beneath their feet, someone jokes that the Cyclops have begun another great project. Fear has softened into affection. The monsters of old have become familiar neighbors beneath the earth. This transformation says something important about memory. Time often removes terror before it removes wonder. Long after people stop believing literal giants-shaped volcanoes, they continue loving the image, because it explains something science alone cannot satisfy, the feeling that creation itself contains mystery. As night deepens, you find yourself standing before another fire, not a village forge, the ancient forge beneath Olympus. Nothing has changed. The eternal flame still burns. 3 stone figures still stand in quiet dignity. No dust covers them. No rust touches the abandoned tools. The room feels strangely alive despite its silence. Athena is said to visit from time to time. So is Hephaestus. Some poets imagine that Hephaestus eventually made this sacred workshop his own after the Cyclopes were gone. Others insisted he never disturbed it. Instead, he built another forge nearby, leaving this one exactly as he found it. Either image carries the same quiet respect. Great craftsmen honor those who came before them. You walk slowly between the silent statues. Brontes still faces the anvil. Steropes remains turned slightly toward the furnace. Argus rests one hand upon the carefully arranged hammers. Their final positions have become eternal. Suddenly, the fire flares. Only for a heartbeat, a shower of sparks rises toward the ceiling. In their brief light, the stone almost appears to move. Almost. You know it is only the dancing flame. Yet myths often live inside moments exactly like this. Not because they prove anything, but because they invite imagination to stand beside memory. The sparks disappear. The forge grows quiet again. You realize something that ancient storytellers may have hoped every listener would eventually understand. The true legacy of the Cyclopes was never the thunderbolt, nor the trident, nor even the walls they supposedly built. Their greatest creation was the belief that careful hands can reshape the world. That patient work matters. That creation demands sacrifice. That those who build civilizations are not always the ones history remembers first. Outside, dawn begins touching the marble peaks of Olympus. The sacred fire continues burning exactly as it always has, waiting not for gods, not for heroes, but for the next pair of hands willing to learn how to shape light from stone. The fire never truly fades. Even after you leave the quiet forge beneath Olympus, its warm glow seems to follow you, lingering somewhere in memory, like the last ember of a campfire after everyone has fallen asleep. The Cyclops themselves have become stories now. Not living neighbors, not divine craftsmen, not lonely shepherds. Stories. And stories have a curious way of traveling farther than the people who first told them. You wander through the marketplaces of ancient Greece once again. The morning sun pours across white marble streets. Potters arrange painted vases outside their workshops. Fishermen repair torn nets, while children chase one another between stone columns. Listen closely. Everywhere you go, someone is telling a tale. A grandmother warns her grandchildren not to wander into unfamiliar caves because a Cyclops might still live there. A sailor swears he once glimpsed a giant silhouette standing atop a distant cliff at sunset. A merchant returning from Sicily insists he found footprints larger than wine barrels pressed into soft volcanic ash. None of them can prove what they claim. None of them truly expects to. That is not the purpose. The Cyclops has become something larger than a creature. He has become an idea. The ancient Greeks filled their world with such ideas. Nymphs explained springs, dryads explained ancient trees, the gods explained storms, and giants explained scale. Whenever people encountered something too enormous to fit ordinary experience, imagination quietly stepped forward. You stand before the mighty stone walls of ancient Mycenae. The blocks are astonishing. Some weigh many tons. They fit together so closely that even after thousands of years, little space remains between them. Visitors stare upward in amazement. One young traveler whispers, "No ordinary men could have lifted these." His companion nods. The Cyclops must have built them. That belief becomes so widespread that later generations give these fortifications a lasting name: Cyclopean masonry. Even today, archaeologists still use the term, not because they believe giants truly raised the walls, but because the ancient explanation became part of history itself. The myth changed the language. Few legends accomplish that. You continue toward Tiryns, then Argos. Again, immense stones greet you. Each city claims some connection with giant builders. Sometimes the Cyclops become architects, sometimes masons, sometimes engineers whose strength surpassed imagination. It is a remarkable transformation. The creatures once feared in lonely caves are now admired for impossible craftsmanship. Fear has slowly become respect. Perhaps that happens more often than we notice as generations pass. The things people first fear sometimes become the things they later celebrate. The stories continue evolving. Playwrights in crowded theaters reshape old myths for new audiences. One evening, you find yourself seated among hundreds of Athenians beneath an open sky. The performance begins. Actors wearing elaborate masks step onto the stage. Soon a familiar figure appears, a one-eyed giant. The audience laughs, not because the Cyclops is harmless, but because they already know the story. The playwright exaggerates his appetite, mocks his temper, turns moments of terror into moments of comedy. Children laugh beside their parents. Old veterans smile knowingly. The myth has entered everyday culture. It no longer belongs only to priests or wandering poets. It belongs to everyone. Some scholars believe this is one reason Greek mythology endured for so many centuries. The stories were never frozen. Every generation reshaped them. A terrifying giant in one century could become a tragic figure in the next. A divine craftsman could become the symbol of honest labor. A lonely shepherd could become a warning against pride. The myths remained alive because they continued changing. You begin noticing the Cyclops in places where no giant ever appears. A blacksmith stamps a tiny single eye onto the handle of a ceremonial hammer. A sculptor quietly hides one-eyed faces among decorative carvings upon a temple roof. A sailor paints a large eye upon the bow of his ship before beginning a dangerous voyage. Officially, the painted eye protects against evil. Unofficially, it reminds him that someone is always watching the sea. Connections like these cannot always be proven. History rarely offers certainty, but myths often survive through symbols long after their original meaning fades. The Cyclops becomes one such symbol. One eye, perfect attention, relentless focus. A craftsman cannot afford distraction. Neither can a sailor navigating hidden reefs, nor a shepherd guarding vulnerable sheep. Perhaps the single eye came to represent concentration rather than deformity. The thought feels strangely beautiful. Far beyond Greece, the stories begin traveling with merchants. Phoenician sailors carry them eastward. Greek colonies spread them westward. Travelers adapt the tales to new landscapes. Soon, unfamiliar mountains gain caves said to shelter one-eyed giants. Volcanoes in Sicily become linked forever with giant smiths. Every culture that receives the story reshapes it slightly. Some giants become crueler. Others become wiser. Some lose their names entirely. Only the single eye remains constant. It is enough. Certain images never need explanation. Night falls as you approach the slopes of Mount Etna. The volcano breathes quietly beneath the stars. A faint red glow flickers deep within its summit. Smoke drifts lazily upward into the cool air. Ancient travelers often believed this was one of the great workshops of the Cyclops. Whenever lava poured from the mountain, they imagined giant furnaces overflowing. Whenever earthquakes shook the ground, they pictured enormous hammers striking hidden anvils. Science eventually explained volcanoes differently. Yet even today, standing before such immense power, you understand why the old stories felt convincing. The earth itself seems alive. The mountain sounds like breathing. The glowing crater resembles an open furnace. Reality sometimes inspires mythology more effectively than imagination alone. You remain there until midnight. The stars wheel slowly overhead. Warm volcanic air rises around you. For a brief moment, the summit glows brighter than before. A shower of sparks bursts upward. You smile, not because you expect to see Brontes or Steropes standing within the fire, but because part of you understands why generations once hoped they might. Hope often survives inside impossible images. As dawn approaches, you begin walking away from the volcano. Behind you, the mountain grows smaller. Ahead lies another path entirely, no longer toward battles, no longer toward shepherds or kings, instead toward memory itself. For every myth eventually reaches a moment when the question is no longer whether the story happened. The deeper question becomes why the story refused to disappear. Why, after thousands of years, people still remember beings with a single eye, still speak their names, still imagine giant hands beneath the mountains, still see something familiar within creatures so wonderfully strange. The answer waits quietly ahead, not in another adventure, but in the lasting shadow the Cyclopes have cast across human imagination. The mountains remain where they have always been. Long after kingdoms crumble into dust, long after marble temples lose their roofs, long after the names of kings fade from memory, the mountains continue watching. You climb one of those ancient slopes in the quiet light before dawn. The air is cool enough to carry the scent of pine resin and damp stone. A gentle breeze moves through weathered cypress trees. Somewhere below, a shepherd's bell echoes across the valley exactly as it might have thousands of years ago. Nothing seems hurried here. Time itself appears to breathe more slowly. It is the perfect place to think about memory, because memory, like a mountain, does not always preserve every detail. Instead, it preserves the shape. The Cyclopes have reached that stage now. Most people no longer remember every version of their story. Few can name Brontes, Steropes, or Arges. Many have forgotten that the first Cyclopes forged the thunderbolt of Zeus. Even fewer remember that one lonely shepherd once spent peaceful mornings guiding frightened lambs across volcanic hillsides. Yet everyone remembers one thing. The eye, one eye, watching, never looking away. How remarkable that a single image could outlive so many different lives. Ancient Greek artists understood the power of symbols. They knew the human mind remembers pictures more easily than explanations. A crown suggests a king, a trident recalls Poseidon, an owl belongs to Athena, and a single eye needs no introduction. The Cyclops became recognizable across generations, languages, and cultures because the image was unforgettable. But symbols change as they travel. To a child, the eye represented a monster hiding beyond the edge of the world. To a sailor, it warned against pride. To a blacksmith, it reflected complete concentration upon the glowing metal. To a philosopher, it suggested a mind fixed upon one truth while overlooking many others. Every generation discovered something different inside the same image. That is the quiet strength of mythology. It does not force one meaning. It offers many. You continue walking until you reach the ruins of an old watchtower overlooking the sea. Only a few broken stones remain. Grass grows between them. Wildflowers bloom where soldiers once stood. From here, the horizon stretches endlessly. Ships appear only as tiny white marks upon the blue water. It suddenly occurs to you that the tower itself resembles an eye. One place, one purpose: to watch, to notice what others cannot. Perhaps that is another reason the Cyclops endured. An eye is more than a feature, it is a promise of attention. The ancient world valued those who truly saw. A shepherd noticed wolves before they reached the flock. A sailor recognized storms while the sky still appeared clear. A craftsman spotted tiny cracks before a blade shattered. A ruler perceived danger before war began. Vision was never simply about sight. It was about understanding. Curiously, the most famous Cyclops loses precisely that gift. Polyphemus becomes blind, yet after losing his eye, he begins hearing more deeply, feeling more carefully, recognizing each sheep through touch alone. The myth quietly suggests something unexpected. Perhaps seeing has never depended entirely upon the eyes. Many later writers reflected upon this irony. Some believed Polyphemus finally understood vulnerability only after blindness humbled him. Others argued that Odysseus, despite keeping both eyes, failed to perceive his own pride until Poseidon's curse followed him across the sea. Who, then, was truly blind? The question refuses an easy answer. Perhaps both men were, in different ways. The Greeks loved questions that remained open. Not every story demanded certainty. Some invited lifelong reflection as the sun climbs higher. You leave the tower and continue toward a small mountain village. Its people welcome strangers with bread, olives, fresh cheese, and cool spring water. Hospitality, the very custom that collapsed inside the cave of Polyphemus. Here it flourishes. Children gather around an elderly storyteller seated beneath a plane tree. His beard has turned completely white. His voice remains strong. He begins speaking, not about kings, not about gods, about the Cyclops. The children lean closer. Some smile. Some look frightened. Others ask impossible questions. Were they really that tall? Did they truly build mountains? Could one giant make lightning? The old man laughs softly. Then he answers in a way that feels wiser than any certainty. Perhaps. The children seem satisfied. They do not need proof. They need wonder. You realize something beautiful in that moment. The Cyclops continue living because each generation receives permission to imagine them anew. The stories are not cages, they are invitations. As evening approaches, you return once more to the silent forge beneath Olympus. It has become strangely familiar now. The eternal fire still burns with calm, unwavering light. 3 stone figures continue their endless watch. You move slowly between them. This time, instead of looking at their faces, you study their eyes. Or rather, their single eyes. None appear frightening. Brontes looks determined. Steropes appears thoughtful. Argus seems almost peaceful. Stone has preserved not only their form, but their character. For a long while, nothing happens. Then the flames shift. Their reflections briefly dance across the polished bronze tools resting upon the workbench. Dozens of tiny points of light appear throughout the room. For one heartbeat, it feels as though hundreds of quiet eyes are watching alongside the 3 great Cyclopes, not judging, simply witnessing. Creation, destruction, memory, time. Then the reflections vanish. Only the steady fire remains. Outside, night settles gently across Olympus. Stars appear one after another. The same stars Brontes once admired while wondering how they felt. The same stars Polyphemus could no longer see after the cave fell silent. The same stars Odysseus followed while searching endlessly for home. Entire generations have looked upward toward them. The stars witnessed every chapter. They chose no sides. Perhaps that is why they still feel comforting. You sit beside the forge until the last sounds of evening disappear. The warmth reaches your hands. The smell of charcoal lingers softly in the air. Somewhere beyond the mountain, ordinary blacksmiths continue striking anvils. Somewhere beyond the sea, shepherds continue guiding their flocks home before darkness. Neither may consciously remember the Cyclopes, yet both still follow paths these ancient beings help shape. The eye never truly closed. It simply became part of the way humanity learned to see itself. And as the fire quietly breathes before you, one final realization begins taking shape. Perhaps the greatest myths never ask us whether giants once walked the earth. Perhaps they ask whether the qualities those giants represented, creation, solitude, pride, patience, loss, still walk beside us today. The sea has no memory of borders. Long before maps divided nations, ships followed the same winds from one coastline to another. Sailors carried more than grain, wine, and olive oil. They carried songs. They carried stories. And stories, unlike cargo, grow lighter the farther they travel. You stand upon the deck of a merchant vessel, leaving the familiar shores of Greece behind you. The temples of the Aegean slowly disappear into the morning haze. Ahead lies an open horizon, filled with lands where people have never heard the names Brontes, Steropes, or Arges. Yet they will, not exactly as the Greeks told them. Stories never travel unchanged. The wind fills the square sail with a deep, steady breath. The smell of salt mixes with tar, wet rope, and fresh-cut cedar. Dolphins briefly race alongside the hull before disappearing beneath the waves. The captain smiles. The sea enjoys company. Perhaps it does, for every voyage carries ideas from one world into another. The myth of the Cyclops begins that same quiet journey. Greek colonies spread westward across the Mediterranean. Merchants settle in Sicily, southern Italy, and distant islands. With them come familiar tales told beside evening fires after long days at sea. Soon, children born hundreds of miles from Athens know the story of the one-eyed giant. But something changes. The Cyclops becomes a local neighbor rather than a distant legend. In Sicily, enormous volcanoes dominate the landscape. The greatest of them all is Mount Etna. Its summit glows red at night. The ground trembles without warning. Rivers of molten rock sometimes descend the mountainside, swallowing forests and fields. How could ancient people explain such power? Many decided they already knew. The Cyclops had moved their forge, deep beneath Etna. Giant hammers rang through hidden caverns. Every earthquake became another mighty strike upon the anvil. Every eruption marked a furnace opened too wide. The mountain itself transformed into a living workshop. Standing before Etna, you almost understand why. Even today, lava glows like molten bronze. Smoke rises like the breath of a giant bellows. The earth sounds alive. Reality often provides the strongest foundation for myth. Farther west, Roman writers inherit the Greek stories. They admire them, expand them, sometimes soften them, sometimes make them grander still. The Roman poet Virgil tells of Aeneas passing near the land of the Cyclopes during his own great voyage. His travelers meet a frightened Greek sailor left behind after Odysseus escaped. The poor man describes Polyphemus wandering blindly along the shore, leaning upon a massive pine trunk while sheep quietly guide his steps. It is one of the saddest images in all ancient literature. The terrifying giant has become an aging shepherd, still dangerous, yet deeply alone. Even Rome could not entirely forget his loneliness. Centuries continue passing. Empires rise, empires fall. The old gods slowly surrender their temples to new beliefs. Yet the Cyclops survives, not as an object of worship, as literature, as art, as imagination. Medieval travelers copying ancient manuscripts preserve the stories. Renaissance painters rediscover them with renewed fascination. Scholars translate Homer into new languages. Every age finds something worth keeping. Artists often become especially interested in Polyphemus and Galatea, unlike Homer's lonely shepherd. Later traditions describe the Cyclops falling hopelessly in love with the beautiful sea nymph Galatea. She loves another, a handsome young shepherd named Assis. Jealousy overwhelms Polyphemus. He crushes his rival beneath an enormous boulder. The tale is tragic, not because love fails, but because loneliness once again becomes destructive. Whether this story reflects an older tradition or a later poetic invention remains uncertain. Either way, it reveals something important. Generation after generation continues asking the same question. Can someone so isolated ever truly belong? The question never grows old. You continue your journey forward through time. The 18th century arrives, then the 19th. Archaeologists begin uncovering forgotten cities buried beneath layers of earth. They measure walls once called impossible. They study ancient volcanoes. They compare surviving myths with newly discovered ruins. Knowledge grows. Yet something surprising happens. Learning does not destroy the Cyclops. Instead, it changes how people understand them. The giant builders become metaphors for astonishing engineering. The divine smiths become symbols of technological mastery. Polyphemus becomes a study in isolation, fear, and pride. The myths lose none of their emotional power. They simply speak a different language. Modern psychologists even recognize familiar patterns within the ancient stories. Loneliness shaping behavior, trauma influencing choices, pride hiding vulnerability. The Greeks described these truths through giants. Today we often describe them differently, yet the human experience remains remarkably similar. You find yourself inside a great museum. Glass cases display fragments of painted pottery. One vase shows Odysseus clinging beneath the ram. Another depicts the Cyclops forging Zeus's thunderbolt. Visitors walk quietly from one display to the next. Some pause only briefly. Others remain for long minutes, studying every detail. A young child tugs gently at her father's sleeve. Did they really exist? The father smiles thoughtfully. I don't know. Then, after another moment, he adds, but the people who told these stories certainly did. It is a beautiful answer. Because myths tell us as much about those who imagined them as those they imagined. The Cyclops reveal ancient hopes, ancient fears, ancient questions. They reveal what it felt like to stand before volcanoes no one understood, to discover walls no ordinary person seemed capable of building, to wonder whether intelligence should overcome strength, to fear becoming isolated from everyone else. These questions remain with us. Only the setting has changed. Night falls outside the museum. You step into cool evening air. Modern cities glow with electric lights instead of oil lamps. Cars replace chariots, airplanes cross skies once ruled by eagles. The world has transformed beyond anything Homer could have imagined. Yet somewhere, a child still draws a giant with one eye. Somewhere, a storyteller still begins with the words, "Long ago." The Cyclops survives, not because people believe every ancient detail, but because the story continues speaking to something quietly human. As stars emerge above the modern world, you realize the journey is almost complete. Only one final stop remains. Not another country, not another century, but the place where every enduring myth eventually returns. Memory itself. The journey has brought you a long way. From the first darkness before the world had shape, to the lonely cliffs where waves broke against the cave of Polyphemus, to distant lands where the story continued changing with every generation that retold it. Now, at last, you return to where it all began, the forge beneath Olympus. It is quieter than you remember, not because the fire has grown weak. The sacred flame still burns with calm, unwavering light. exactly as it did when Brontes first placed metal into its heart. Its glow still warms the ancient stone walls. The scent of charcoal and bronze still lingers softly in the air. The silence feels different because you understand it now. At the beginning of this journey, the quiet seemed empty. Now it feels full of memory, full of work completed, full of lives that mattered. You walk slowly across the worn stone floor. Every step echoes gently. The tools remain exactly where Argus left them. The great bellows stand waiting beside the furnace. The anvils bear thousands of tiny marks left by countless patient blows. Each scar tells a story, not of destruction, of creation. It is easy to remember the thunderbolt. The weapon became famous because it appeared in the hands of Zeus. Yet how many people remember the hands that forged it? History often shines its brightest light upon rulers. The Cyclops remind us to look toward the craftsmen standing quietly behind them. Without builders, there are no cities. Without farmers, there are no kingdoms. Without storytellers, there is no memory. Without those willing to work unseen, there are no heroes. Perhaps that has always been the true lesson hidden inside the forge. You pause before the stone figure of Brontes. His face still carries the faint suggestion of a smile. You remember his first wonder beneath the newborn sky, his years in Tartarus, his careful shaping of divine fire, his calm acceptance before Apollo's arrow. He never ruled, never sought a throne, yet the world changed because he existed. You moved to Steropes, the thoughtful brother, the patient observer, the one who repaired, refined, and perfected. How many quiet people throughout history have resembled him? Men and women whose names disappeared while their work continued serving generations they would never meet. Then comes Argus, youngest, gentlest, the keeper of order within the workshop. His final words still seem to linger in the warm air. Take care of the fire. Such a simple sentence, yet perhaps no greater inheritance could exist. Every generation receives a fire from those who came before. Knowledge, wisdom, craft, compassion. The question has never been whether the fire survives. The question is whether someone chooses to tend it. Outside, dawn begins touching the marble peaks of Olympus. Golden light slips quietly through the high entrance of the forge. For the first time, sunlight and fire burn together. Neither overpowers the other. Instead, they share the room. You think about Polyphemus. How strange that the most famous Cyclops was not the greatest. History sometimes remembers the loudest story rather than the deepest one. Most people know the blinded giant. Far fewer know the patient builders who helped shape the cosmos. Yet perhaps that too reflects something true about humanity. Conflict is easier to remember than kindness. Violence attracts attention more quickly than quiet devotion. Still, the forge remains. Long after the cave has fallen silent, you begin walking toward the entrance. Before leaving, you turn for one last look. The three brothers stand exactly as they have throughout this long journey. Watching, waiting, remembered. Then something extraordinary happens. Not a miracle. Not quite. The morning breeze enters the forge. It passes gently through the old bellows. A soft breath escapes. The dying embers brighten, only slightly, enough to send a handful of tiny sparks rising into the air. They drift upward in complete silence. 1, 2, 3. Then they disappear. You smile. Perhaps it is only the wind. Perhaps it has always been only the wind. But some moments ask not for certainty, only gratitude. Leaving the forge behind, you step onto the slopes of Olympus. The world stretches endlessly below. Blue seas shimmer beneath the rising sun. Villages wake to another ordinary morning. Smoke rises from countless small homes. Somewhere, a blacksmith is already lighting today's fire. Somewhere, a shepherd is opening the gate for waiting sheep. Somewhere, a child is asking impossible questions about giants with one eye. Life continues, as it always has. as it always will. The Cyclops have become part of that quiet continuation, not because they still walk among mountains, but because the ideas they carried continue traveling through human hearts. The courage to create, the patience to master a craft, the danger of allowing pride to rule wisdom, the loneliness that grows when fear replaces trust, the hope that even those who appear different still long for belonging. These are not ancient lessons alone. They belong to every age. You realize at last that this has never truly been the story of creatures with one eye. It had been the story of how every life is seen only in part. The gods saw weapons, the titans saw threats, the sailors saw monsters, the poets saw symbols. But if you have walked beside the Cyclopes from their first sunrise until this final morning, perhaps you have seen something else. Children longing for acceptance, brothers protecting one another through impossible darkness, craftsmen shaping a better world they would never rule, a lonely shepherd trapped inside fear and misunderstanding, and memories that refuse to disappear. The ancient Greeks believed that as long as someone spoke a name, a part of that life remained in the world. Tonight, you have spoken many names: Brontes, Steropes, Agis, Polyphemus, names carried across thousands of years by firelight, poetry, and quiet voices willing to remember. The forge grows quieter now. The sacred fire settles into a steady glow. The mountains stand peacefully beneath the brightening sky. The sea continues its endless breathing beyond the horizon. Everything feels exactly as it should. As you slowly make your way down the mountain, the sounds of the forge fade behind you until only birdsong remains. The journey is over, the fire still burns, and somewhere, just beyond the edge of memory, 3 patient brothers continue shaping light from stone, one careful strike at a time. May their quiet labor remind us that the strongest hands are not always those that conquer the world, but those that spend a lifetime creating it.